My younger sister, Jessica, a walking embodiment of entitlement and insatiable greed, managed to get herself pregnant by my older sister Rebecca's fiancé, David, a mere 3 weeks before their wedding day. The grotesque announcement delivered with a smug grin, ambushed us all during a family dinner, twisting what should have been a celebratory meal into a tableau of utter devastation. From that moment, a slow, methodical unraveling began. We initiated a brutal reality check, systematically dismantling the privileged pedestal she so confidently occupied. The discovery itself, that Jessica had been surreptitiously entangled with David for half a year and was now carrying his child, ignited an inferno of tension that scorched every corner of our family dynamic. Rebecca, blindsided and heartbroken, grappled with the raw, visceral pain of betrayal. Yet, Jessica, the perennial golden child, accustomed to preferential treatment and consequence-free antics, exhibited not a shred of shame. Instead, with a brazenness that defied belief, she proceeded to marry David at the exact same venue Rebecca had painstakingly booked, even donning a pristine white gown of stark, almost mocking symbol of purity despite being visibly 7 months pregnant. It was a calculated act of public humiliation, a twisted parody of Rebecca's shattered dreams. Initially, Rebecca was utterly crushed. The sting of betrayal was exacerbated by Jessica's cruel appropriation of every detail. Rebecca's meticulously planned wedding arrangements, her chosen vendors, even the audacious attempt to steal her carefully selected wedding dress. Can you imagine the sheer audacity, the depth of malice required for such an act? It was a violation beyond mere infidelity. It was a theft of identity, a desecration of her hopes. During this tumultuous period, the bond between Rebecca and me solidified into an unbreakable alliance. We became each other's anchors, navigating the tempest of deceit and heartbreak together, offering solace and strength in the face of such profound betrayal. Eventually, through a grueling process of healing and self-discovery, Rebecca began to emerge from the shadow of that trauma. She found solace and, eventually, a profound love with Malik, a remarkably successful and enduring investment banker. Malik wasn't just wealthy, he possessed an uncanny ability to understand the intricate scars of her past, treating her not merely as a partner, but like royalty. A queen worthy of adoration and unwavering respect. Their destination, wedding in breathtaking Santorini, was a testament to new beginnings, a radiant celebration of enduring love. And I had the immense honor of standing by her side as her maid of honor. In a display of astonishing grace, Rebecca even extended invitations to our parents, despite their disheartening presence at Jessica's earlier wedding to David, where they had feigned ignorance, acting as if nothing untoward had ever transpired. Predictably, they did not attend Rebecca's wedding, a silent, painful reaffirmation of where their loyalties truly lay. Several more years drifted by, a quiet stretch of time during which life settled into a new rhythm for us. Then, abruptly, our parents, seemingly burdened by unspoken regrets or perhaps a sudden shift in their own circumstances, reached out to Rebecca. Their pleas for reconciliation thick with desperation. Rebecca, ever the magnanimous soul, agreed to a rapprochement, and so the stage was set for another faithful family dinner precise moment, as it turned out, where the brewing craft storm finally erupted. Rebecca arrived with Malik, her strength a quiet counterpoint to Jessica, David, and their 2 children, who were already present. Throughout the evening, a palpable tension hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I couldn't help but notice Jessica's incessant, thinly veiled barbs, each comment a carefully crafted dagger aimed squarely at Rebecca. She'd punctuate discussions with pointed remarks about how some people just can't have children, a cruel reference to Rebecca and Malik's private struggles with infertility, their quiet, persistent efforts to conceive. Jessica would then pivot, gushing about what an amazing father David was, clearly aiming to highlight Malik's comparatively silent presence. Yet, Malik, ever the stoic and supportive husband, merely tightened his grip on Rebecca's hand beneath the tablecloth, a silent testament to their unwavering solidarity. As the main course was served, our parents, ever striving for a semblance of normalcy, rose to offer a toast, but their words were abruptly eclipsed. From out of nowhere, Jessica, with a dramatic flourish that commanded the entire room's attention, stood up. Her voice, dripping with saccharine sweetness, declared her immense blessings in having such a beautiful family and, with a pause for maximum effect, triumphantly announced, "I'm pregnant again." Then, her gaze, cold and calculating, swiveled to Rebecca. "Sis," she purred, a predatory glint in her eyes, "I know it must be hard for you because David chose me and we have this beautiful family now, but thanks for your blessing. I know it must be hard for you to be here, knowing you can't have children while I'm on my 3rd, but I really do applaud your bravery." The words hung in the air, each syllable a poisoned dart designed to inflict maximum pain, to revel in Rebecca's perceived inadequacy. That, dear reader, was the precise, defining moment when Jessica's carefully constructed world imploded. The instant she received most cataclysmic reality check of her life. Malik, Rebecca's husband, who had been a quiet, unassuming force throughout the evening and, as we would soon discover, had been meticulously, almost surgically, dissecting David's financial dealings for months, rose slowly from his seat. His voice, calm and cutting, sliced through the stunned silence. "Actually, Jessica," he began, a chilling edge to his tone, "we have some news too. We're not only expecting twins through IVF, a testament to our perseverance, wouldn't you say? But I've also just completed the acquisition of David's company through a hostile takeover. As of Monday morning, your husband will be, shall we say, utterly unemployed." He then turned his steely gaze directly to David, who visibly flinched. "Oh, and those 3 other women you've been sleeping with." They've all been contacted by my wife's divorce attorney friend. Jessica, you might want to get tested for a few things if you catch my drift. But here's the absolute best part, the crescendo of your karmic symphony. Remember that prenup you so eagerly signed, so desperate were you to secure David's hand? Well, that rather inconvenient infidelity clause means you get precisely nothing. The room plunged into an immediate, suffocating silence, a collective gasp swallowed by the sheer weight of Malik's revelations. David's phone, however, became a furious, relentless symphony of vibrations and rings, a grim soundtrack to his unraveling world. The other women, as Malik had meticulously arranged, had already begun their public excoriation on social media, their posts surely painting a vivid, humiliating portrait of his duplicity, while his divorce attorney, now fully appraised, frantically attempted to reach him. But then an unexpected, chilling sound pierced the stunned quiet. Jessica began to laugh, a slow, unnerving, almost deranged cackle that sent shivers down everyone's spines, filling the room with an acute sense of discomfort. With a disturbing air of triumph, she produced her phone, the screen already alight, and held it up, displaying a video to the assembled, bewildered faces. You think you've won, Rebecca Malik? She sneered, her eyes gleaming with a manic gleam. I've been recording every single private conversation you've had in your home for the past 2 years, including a rather incriminating one where you discussed this hostile takeover before it was ever made public. That, darling, is textbook insider trading, and it carries rather severe penalties, wouldn't you agree? But here's the absolute best part, the cherry on top of your reading cake. I possess recordings of you admitting to something far, far worse. Something that transpired back in college, a dark secret you believed was buried forever, known to no one but yourself. Rebecca's face, already pale from the earlier shocks, drained of all color, turning a ghastly white as Jessica continued her chilling monologue, savoring every word. So here's how this is going to play out, Jessica dictated, her voice now dripping with cold, hard menace. You are going to immediately call off this absurd takeover. You are going to transfer a cool $5 million directly into my account. And you are going to smiley a big, genuine smile while you do it. Or tomorrow morning, first thing, these recordings find their way to the FBI, your choice. Malik, ever protective, began to interject, but Jessica cut him off with a dismissive wave. Oh, and Malik, she added, a sly, malicious grin spreading across her face. I also have rather detailed recordings of your, shall we call them, creative tax strategies. Turns out David wasn't the only one who's been a little naughty with the law, was he? The implication was clear. Both Rebecca and Malik were now seemingly trapped. Their carefully constructed lives vulnerable to exposure. But then, a remarkable shift occurred. Rebecca, who moments before had looked utterly devastated, began to laugh too. It wasn't a fragile, tearful laugh, but a low, confident chuckle that deepened into something cold and utterly predatory. She looked at Jessica with an expression I had never, ever witnessed before, a calm, chilling resolve that replaced the terror. In a voice barely above a whisper, yet resonating with incredible power, she said quietly, you really should have checked who actually owns the security company that installed those cameras, Jess. The room went absolutely dead silent, the air thick with an unspoken question, a collective dread. Jessica's triumphant smile, for the very first time, faltered, crumbling into a look of dawning horror. What did you just say? She whispered, her voice barely audible, laced with a tremor of disbelief. Rebecca, her hand resting protectively, almost defiantly, on her stomach, rose slowly, deliberately, to her full height. Her gaze, now piercing and unyielding, locked onto Jessica's. I said, she repeated, her voice clear and resonant, you should have checked who owns the security company. Plot twist, little sister. I've known about your precious recordings for the past 18 months, and in that time, I've been feeding you exactly what I wanted you to hear. Exactly what I wanted you to hear, to truly absorb and dissect every single word uttered. Just as the weight of Rebecca's chilling revelation settled, a deafening silence descended upon the room, heralded by the abrupt demise of electronic light. Jessica's phone, clutched in her trembling hand, was the first to succumb, its vibrant screen plunging into an inky blackness. Mine followed instantaneously, the sudden void unsettling. Then, one by one, like a ripple of digital dust, every other screen in the room blitzed. Smartwatches, even the silent, flickered and died, leaving us in an unnerving, almost primitive darkness. It felt deliberate, a calculated severing of our connection to the outside world, trapping us in this escalating domestic battlefield. The question is, Rebecca's voice, now laced with an icy, controlled calm, sliced through the stunned quiet. She began to walk, her steps measured and deliberate, a predator closing in on its prey, directly toward Jessica. Her gaze, unflinching and piercing, locked onto her sister. Do you truly want to know what I've been meticulously recording within the very walls of your seemingly secure home, Jessica? A pause, heavy with unspoken menace, hung in the air. Because I promise you, she continued, her tone dropping to a low, chilling register. What I possess is infinitely, undeniably worse than any flimsy evidence or half-truths you mistakenly believe you hold against me. Prepare yourself. The depth of your deception will be laid bare. It was at that precise, unbearable moment, as Rebecca's words hung like poison, that a distant, wailing cry pierced the strained quiet. Sirens. Faint at first, they quickly swelled, their mournful crescendo growing louder and more insistent, drawing nearer with each agonizing second. Through the ornate dining room window, I watched with a morbid fascination as the unmistakable red and white gleam of an ambulance pulled into view, its emergency lights pulsing rhythmically. casting an eerie glow on our neighbor's manicured lawn. Mrs. Chen, our sweet, elderly neighbor from just 3 doors down, was being gently, yet swiftly, wheeled out on a stretcher, her face pale, a blanket pulled high over her. Logically, intellectually, we knew the timing was a cruel coincidence. An unrelated emergency unfolding just yards away. Yet, the suffocating, almost palpable tension that had seized our dining room was so absolute, so overwhelming, that it made every jarring wail of those sirens feel acutely personal. As if they were sounding a mournful alarm specifically for us, for the impending collapse of our own fractured family. Jessica's hands, usually so steady and poised, now trembled uncontrollably, a frantic blur as she repeatedly, desperately pressed the now useless buttons on her dead phone. A futile attempt to resurrect its connection. David, meanwhile, was a statue carved from pure shock, utterly frozen in place, his face a canvas upon which a tempest of emotions raged. Confusion creased his brow, swiftly followed by a flash of wrath, indignant anger, before giving way to a chilling, primal fear that tightened his jaw. Our parents, who had always prided themselves on their composure, were utterly speechless, rendered inert by the unfolding drama. Their eyes, wide with a mixture of disbelief and horror, darted back and forth between their 2 daughters, a frantic, bewildered oscillation, much like spectators at a particularly intense, yet utterly incomprehensible, tennis match, unable to grasp the rules or the stakes. In stark, almost defiant contrast to the electronic silence of our devices, Rebecca calmly, almost leisurely, pulled out her own phone. It glowed with a perfect, pristine light, somehow immune to the widespread outage that had crippled our communication. With a few deliberate, precise taps on the screen, a chilling transformation occurred. Suddenly, without warning, the room was filled with Rebecca's voice, but with Jessica's. Her unmistakable tones, clear and resonant, emanated from what could only be cleverly concealed hidden speakers, turning our dining room into an unwitting theater for her secrets. The voice, unmistakably Jessica's, dripped with disdain. David's so unbelievably stupid. He actually deludes himself into thinking those other women his fleeting distractions meant anything beyond a momentary amusement, a pause, then a colder, more calculating tone. I've been systematically, meticulously siphoning money from his accounts for months now, like a slow, insidious bleed. By the time I finished with him, by the time my intricate plans fully unfurl, he'll be left with absolutely nothing, a financial husk. The recording continued its relentless, damning expose. Jessica's voice, recorded with unsettling clarity, unfolded a tapestry of malice. We heard her openly discussing elaborate plans to frame Rebecca for a litany of various, fabricated crimes, each one designed to inflict maximum damage. Her chilling schemes to irrevocably turn our parents against Rebecca, twisting their affections and loyalties beyond repair. But then, the audio pivoted to the most heinous, the most utterly damning revelation of all, her casual, yet explicit, confession about deliberately causing Rebecca's first, heartbreaking miscarriage. To agonizing years ago, at what was supposed to be a joyous family barbecue, she had callously slipped something, an unspecified but undoubtedly potent substance, into Rebecca's drink, orchestrating the devastating loss with cold, calculated cruelty. The moment the confession of the miscarriage spilled into the room, a guttural roar erupted from David. He lunged, a sudden, animalistic burst of rage propelling him across the space, his target Rebecca's phone as source of his impending ruin. But almost instantaneously, Malik, despite being notably smaller, slighter in build than David's formidable frame, moved with an astonishing swiftness. He stepped directly between them, a silent, unyielding barrier. It wasn't Malik's physical presence, but the sheer, unwavering calm radiating from him, a quiet authority that defied the chaos, which halted David in his tracks. That serene composure made David recoil, his initial aggression deflating immediately. Sit down, Malik's voice was a low, quiet command, yet it resonated with an undeniable force. And to everyone's astonishment, David, the man who had just been moments away from violence, simply sat. Jessica, meanwhile, was undergoing a grotesque transformation. Her face, which had been flushed with initial anger red, drained to an ashen white of shock, before taking on an unsettling, sickly green hue. She clutched her stomach tightly, her knuckles white, and for a terrifying moment, a wave of nausea so profound seemed to ripple through her that I genuinely feared she might actually be violently sick, right there, staining our mother's prized, intricately patterned Persian rug. That is that S-edited, Jessica stammered, her voice a reedy whisper of desperation. A last-ditch attempt to cling to a shred of plausible deniability. You can't prove anything. Those recordings are entirely fake, doctored, fabricated. Rebecca responded not with a word, but with a slow, chilling smile. It was a smile utterly devoid of warmth or humor, a predatory bearing of teeth that sent shivers down my spine. Really, Jess, her voice was deceptively soft, yet each word was a razor's edge. Because I happen to possess the pristine originals. Every single one is meticulously timestamped, unequivocally location tagged, providing an undeniable digital footprint. And here's the kicker, some of them even come with accompanying video footage, providing irrefutable visual evidence of your calculated malice. She paused, letting the implications sink in. Like the particularly revealing one where you're brazenly rummaging through my private medical records in my own house, while I was agonizing through yet another one of my emotionally taxing fertility appointments. Or perhaps, Rebecca continued, her voice hardening with profound disgust, the one where you're systematically, deliberately teaching your innocent 4-year-old Sonomir 4 years old? Jessicato referred to me as the sad auntie who can't have babies, instilling nascent cruelty and mockery into a child so young, already poisoning his tender mind against me. What kind of monster does that? Our mother, who had been a silent, petrified spectator until now, finally managed to wrench her voice free from the chokehold of shock. Her words were a desperate, pleading whisper barely audible. Rebecca, Jessica, please. Her hands fluttered in a gesture of frantic appeasement. We're family. Surely, we can work this out, talk through this, without all this. This drama, this utterly unnecessary drama, the repeated word drama hung in the air, a stark understatement that grated on the raw nerves of the room. Rebecca, her body now stiff with righteous indignation, turned her gaze from Jessica to our mother. In her eyes, years decades, ebon off meticulously suppressed anger of countless slights and unspoken betrayals finally violently surfaced, erupting like a long-dormant volcano. She, Rebecca, spat, her voice trembling with the sheer force of her fury, slept with my fiancé, the man I was supposed to marry, for a calculated, agonizing 6 months behind my back. She had the audacity, the unmitigated gall, to wear a pristine white gown to her own wedding, a symbolic gesture of purity, while overtly pregnant with his child, my former fiancé's child. A twisted trophy of her deceit. She brazenly exploited my meticulously planned wedding arrangements, appropriated my chosen vendors, and even attempted to literally steal my custom-made wedding dress. A garment meant for my special day. And you, mother, you dared to dismiss all of that as mere drama? Rebecca's voice climbed, raw and wounded. You attended her fraudulent wedding, smiling, pretending as if absolutely nothing untoward had transpired. You made your choice then, didn't you? You unequivocally chose her over me, just as you have consistently, without fail, chosen her throughout our entire lives, time and time again. We didn't choose sides. Our father interjected, his voice a mere whimper of protest, utterly devoid of conviction, a transparent attempt to evade accountability. His words felt hollow, a fragile shield against the truth. Silence is choosing a side, I found myself saying, the words escaping my lips before I had even consciously formed them, a sudden, unexpected eruption from my own long-held observations. Every head in the room, propelled by surprise and a sudden shift in attention, swiveled to stare at me, their expressions a mix of shock and dawning realization. You've been silent about Jessica's truly atrocious behavior for our entire lives, haven't you? I continued, the dam of my own suppressed resentment finally breaking. When she ruthlessly stole Rebecca's boyfriends in high school, shattering her trust and self-esteem, your only response was a dismissive, boys will be boys, effectively trivializing her pain. When she brazenly copied Rebecca's meticulously crafted college essays, securing her admission into the exact same prestigious university, your justification was a quaint, utterly inappropriate imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And then, when she literally, unequivocally stole her fiancé, the man Rebecca loved and planned to marry, your callous advice to Rebecca was that she should be happy for her sister, twisting victimhood into an expectation of joy for her abuser. You haven't not chosen sides. You've been actively, consistently choosing Jessica by enabling her destructive, manipulative behavior for a staggering 28 years. Sensing her previous tactics crumbling, Jessica, with the practiced precision of a seasoned performer, immediately pivoted to a different, time-tested strategy. Tears. They welled up instantly, overflowing her eyes with remarkable ease, streaming down her face in a torrent. They always had a convenient weapon in her emotional arsenal. I'm pregnant, she wailed, her voice thick with manufactured anguish, clutching her stomach dramatically. Yo, I can't do this to a pregnant woman. Think of my innocent children. Rebecca's response was swift, cutting, and utterly devoid of sympathy. Oh, I'm thinking of your children, Jessica, she retorted, her voice a chilling monotone, each word a shard of ice. They deserve so much better than a mother who routinely lies, who brazenly cheats, and who shamelessly steals, carving a path of destruction through others' lives. They deserve so much better than to be raised by parents who implicitly, through their own actions and inaction, teach them that inflicting harm upon others is not only permissible but acceptable, provided you can just get away with it. With a definitive, resolute movement, Rebecca turned back to her still-functioning phone, her fingers expertly navigating the screen. This next one, Jess, she announced, her tone almost conversational. This one is unequivocally my favorite. Another file loaded, and suddenly, the room was filled with the unmistakable sound of Jessica and David's voices, locked in a heated, vicious argument about David's numerous, clandestine affairs. The shocking revelation wasn't that they were arguing, but the reason. Jessica wasn't expressing heartbreak or emotional pain. Rather, her fury was purely transactional. We heard her, clear as a bell, screaming, and I quote directly from the recording, "Those women better not think they're getting any of my money." Rebecca then interjected, "You knew about every single one of his sordid affairs, didn't you, Jessica? Every single illicit rendezvous, every betrayal. And you didn't care, not one bit, as long as the financial checks kept consistently rolling in, ensuring your lavish lifestyle." As if on cue, a sudden, jarring jolt of life returned to David's previously inert phone. It erupted into a furious, relentless buzzing, vibrating with what sounded like 100 urgent notifications assailing him all at once. His face, already pale from the earlier revelations, drained further, becoming an ashen mask as his eyes frantically scanned the screen. The business accounts, he stammered, his voice laced with dawning horror. They're frozen. All of them? How did you? How did you manage this? Moloch, who had remained a silent, observant presence, finally spoke, his voice unnervingly calm, almost academic. Turns out, David, when you systematically use company funds, your business's financial resources to discreetly pay for lavish hotel rooms, expensive dinners, and gifts for your numerous girlfriends, that's not just a personal indiscretion. That, my friend, is legally defined as embezzlement. He offered a slight, almost imperceptible shrug. The board, as you might imagine, was extraordinarily interested in those meticulously gathered receipts. They convened an emergency meeting a mere hour ago, an expedited session to address the egregious misuse of corporate assets. You're not officially unemployed yet, David, but rest assured, you will be by morning. A stark reality awaiting you with the sunrise, he added, with a hint of sardonic satisfaction. And those women you've been illicitly seeing. They've all proven remarkably cooperative in providing compelling evidence against you, especially a certain Samantha, the one who happens to be pregnant with your child. She, in particular, is extraordinarily incensed by your repeated, deceitful claims that you were a divorced man freely available to her. Jessica, her face now a contorted mask of pure, unadulterated fury and panic, stood up so abruptly that she violently knocked over her water glass. It tumbled to the floor with a sharp crack, spilling its contents in a spreading, icy puddle, a chaotic reflection of her internal state. You can't prove any of this, she shrieked, her voice shrill with desperation, her last defenses crumbling. I'll sue you for defamation. I'll take absolutely everything you have. You hear me? Rebecca merely raised an eyebrow, a picture of composure amidst the escalating bedlam. With what lawyer, Jess, she asked, her voice calm, almost amused by the hollow threat. She then delivered the final, devastating blow, a coup de grace. Oh, don't tell me you were thinking of using the one you've been having that sordid affair with. Marcus, isn't it? Oh, yes, I know all about Marcus, too. And here's an interesting development. His wife now knows as well. And just as a little side note, darling, she's also a lawyer, a remarkably sharp one, actually. A senior partner at their very prestigious firm, no less. So, I don't think Marcus will be quite so eager to take your frantic, late-night calls anymore, do you? The entire room, once a picture of domestic harmony, now felt as though it were violently spinning, its carefully constructed reality unraveling with dizzying speed. Our parents, who moments ago seemed merely shocked, now looked as though they had visibly aged, not just by 10 years but by 10 agonizing minutes, their faces etched with profound despair. The weight of a lifetime of denial crashing down. David, completely consumed, was frantically, desperately scrolling through his phone, his eyes wide with horror, presumably witnessing the meticulous, agonizing real-time disintegration of his entire life, his career, his finances, his reputational dissolving into digital dust before his very eyes. And Jessica? She stood utterly motionless, a pathetic, broken figure, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly, gasping for breath like a fish suffocating on dry land, completely bereft of words, utterly stripped of her power and her cunning. Here's precisely what's going to happen next, Rebecca announced, her voice now imbued with an unshakable authority, a quiet but absolute power that had been forged in the crucible of their betrayals. She stood up, tall and resolute, her hand instinctively, protectively resting over her stomach, a clear, defiant gesture guarding her vulnerable future. You, she directed her gaze squarely at Jessica, her voice firm and unwavering, are going to immediately leave my house, and you are going to leave me and my life completely alone. Without further interference, furthermore, you are going to permanently cease and desist from spreading any more of your malicious, fabricated lies about me or anyone else. And finally, Jessica, you are going to get therapy, real therapy. Not the superficial, manipulative kind where you skillfully charm your way through sessions, twisting narratives and exploiting weaknesses, but genuine, profound introspection and psychological help. The therapist into thinking you were the helpless victim. But now, that charade is over. You're going to stay far away from me and my family, understand? Or what? Jessica snarled, her voice a low, venomous growl. The carefully constructed facade, the sweet sister act she had perfected over years, finally crumbled completely, revealing the raw malice beneath. Or what? She spat, a cruel smirk twisting her lips. You'll release some edited recordings, won't you? You truly think you've won this little game? Think again. I'll destroy you, Rebecca. I'll make absolutely sure that everyone, every single person we know, understands what kind of truly despicable individual you really are. She practically vibrated with a dark, triumphant energy, convinced she held all the cards. But Rebecca, with a quiet composure that belied the fury in the room, simply pulled out her phone. Her thumb moved with deliberate precision, bringing up one final video, a silent, damning testament to Jessica's depravity. It was Jessica herself, looking almost nonchalant, sitting in what appeared to be Rebecca's very own bedroom. In her hand, she held a small, innocuous-looking bottle of pills. These should do it, Jessica's recorded voice murmured, chillingly casual, emanating from the phone speaker. A few of these in her smoothie, and bye-bye, baby. She just think it's another miscarriage. Poor Rebecca, the words hung in the air, a grotesque lullaby of malice, painting a picture of calculated cruelty. A profound, suffocating silence descended upon the room. It was so absolute, so heavy, that even the distant wail of sirens from outside seemed to fade away, swallowed by the sheer horror of what had just been revealed. The world outside ceased to exist. Only the icy grip of that confession remained. You recorded yourself planning to poison me, Rebecca said, her voice barely a whisper, yet it cut through the silence like a sharp blade. Her gaze, though quiet, was filled with an unyielding clarity. You recorded yourself actually doing it, and then you kept the video. Why, Jess, she asked, the question laced with a morbid curiosity, an attempt to understand a mind so twisted. The unspoken answer hung there, a monstrous truth, as a trophy. Suddenly, as if the ground beneath her had given way, Jessica's legs buckled. The fight, the snarl, the defiant energy, it all evaporated in an instant. She collapsed, not gently, but like a puppet whose strings had been abruptly severed, falling heavily into her chair, her entire being deflated. All the venom, all the aggression, had drained out of her, leaving her a hollow shell. I didn't mean it, she stammered, her voice thin and reedy, a pathetic attempt at denial. It wasn't supposed to. Wasn't supposed to what? The narrator interjected, their voice sharp, cutting through Jessica's feeble excuses. To kill my baby, just make me sick enough to have a miscarriage. What exactly was your plan, Jess? What twisted fantasy were you trying to fulfill? Our mother, who until then had been frozen in shock, finally broke. She started to sob, deep, gut-wrenching sobs, and for the first time in years, these were real tears, not the calculated, manipulative kind Jessica had wielded like weapons against us. But genuine anguish, my babies, she choked out, clutching herself, her voice raw with grief. What have you done? What have we done? The weight of their complicity, of years of enabling, seemed to crush her. You enabled a monster, the narrator stated flatly, their voice devoid of emotion, a stark pronouncement of truth. And now you're finally seeing what monsters do when they believe they are invincible, when they think they can act with impunity, destroying everything in their path. David, who had been pale and rigid, suddenly sprang up from his seat, a frantic energy seizing him. I need to go. I need to. The lawyers, I have to. His words tumbled out, disjointed and desperate, as he stumbled towards the door, his eyes wide with a dawning terror. But Malik's calm, steady voice stopped him dead in his tracks. I wouldn't go home if I were you, David, Malik said, his tone deceptively mild, yet carrying an undeniable weight. Samantha's there, along with her brothers. They're very protective of their pregnant sister, the one you so conveniently told you were getting divorced to marry. Each word was a calculated blow, a revelation of betrayal upon betrayal. David's face, if it were even possible, went an even ghastlier shade of white. His body seemed to give out, and he slumped against the doorframe, utterly defeated, the implications of Malik's words crashing down on him like a tidal wave. He was caught, exposed, and utterly alone. Rebecca, meanwhile, moved with newfound purpose. She gathered her purse, her fingers firm, and took Malik's offered hand, a silent gesture of solidarity and strength. We're leaving now, she announced, her voice ringing with finality. She turned her gaze to Jessica, her eyes cold and unwavering. Jess, you have exactly 48 hours to get your cameras and any other surveillance devices out of my home. I've already changed the locks, so you'll need to call first. A security team will supervise your visit, just to ensure everything is removed properly. Rebecca, please, Jessica whispered, her voice a faint plea, a ghost of her former defiance. I'm your sister. No, Rebecca said firmly, her tone leaving no room for argument, for negotiation, for any shred of doubt. You're merely someone who happened to share a womb with me. Sisters don't try to poison each other. Sisters don't steal each other's fiancés, shattering relationships and trust. Sisters don't cause miscarriages out of petty jealousy. You are not my sister, Jessica. You're just someone I used to know. A ghost from a past I'm ready to bury. She then turned her gaze to her parents, who sat huddled together, looking utterly lost. And you too, she continued, her voice heavy with sorrowful resignation. I'm done hoping you'll ever choose me. Go ahead, choose your golden child. Live with that choice, embrace it, but know this, my children will never know you. They will never know the grandparents who stood idly by, passively enabling a monster, while one daughter systematically tried to destroy the other. As Rebecca and Malik walked purposefully toward the door, their steps resolute, Jessica made one last, desperate, pathetic attempt to regain some semblance of control or inflict one final wound. You're recording this, too, aren't you? She shrieked, her voice cracking. This whole thing, you're just as bad as me. Rebecca paused at the threshold, turning to look back, her expression a mix of weary disdain and quiet triumph. The difference, Jess, she said, her voice clear and cutting, is that I'm recording evidence of your crimes. You, on the other hand, recorded yourself committing them. And for the record, she added a subtle, knowing smile playing on her lips, this isn't being recorded. I don't need to. Everyone here heard everything, didn't they? Mom, Dad, David, our sister. Everyone knows who you really are now. That, she concluded, her voice imbued with a chilling finality, is punishment enough. With that, she and Malik walked out, closing the door behind them, sealing off the wreckage. The silence that followed was not just quiet. It was deafening, a palpable void filled with the echoes of shattered lives and broken trust. Jessica remained at the table, slumped and defeated, staring blankly at her hands, as if searching for answers in her own palms. David stood frozen by the door, a statue of regret and panic. Our parents clung to each other, their faces etched with a profound sense of loss and irreparable damage, looking utterly broken, their world having just imploded. I stood up to leave, too unable to bear another second in the suffocating aftermath. Where are you going? My mother asked, her voice laced with a desperate plea for connection, for someone to stay. To Rebecca's, I said simply, without hesitation. To celebrate the twins with my actual sister, the one who never tried to poison anyone. The one you should have protected, cherished, and stood by, instead of enabling her abuser for all these years. As I walked out, the sound of Jessica's sobs began to fill the quiet house. Not the fake, performative tears she had perfected over years of manipulation and calculated victimhood, but real, ugly, soul-deep crying. The kind that erupts when you finally realize you've systematically destroyed everything and everyone around you, leaving no one and nothing. And there's absolutely no one left to blame but yourself. The ambulance, which had been a stark symbol of the morning's chaos, was gone when I stepped outside. The neighborhood was quiet, almost peacefully serene, bathed in the soft afternoon light. But inside that house, a family lay in ruins, irrevocably shattered. And for once, a strange sense of justice permeated the air. The right person was finally, truly paying the excruciating price for their monstrous deeds. I drove to Rebecca's house in a silence that mirrored the profound quiet of the suburban streets. My hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white as I meticulously processed the raw, brutal reality of what had just unfolded. The familiar, unassuming streets felt surreal, disconnected from the emotional maelstrom we had just escaped. When I pulled into her driveway, I saw Malik's car already there, a reassuring presence. The porch light was on, a warm, inviting beacon that seemed to welcome me into a haven of safety and sanity. Rebecca opened the door before I even had a chance to knock, as if she sensed my arrival. Her face bore the unmistakable signs of deep exhaustion, but beneath it, a profound sense of relief softened her features. We embraced without words, a silent communion of shared trauma and hard-won triumph, and I followed her inside, where Malik was already in the kitchen, the comforting aroma of freshly brewed tea filling the air. "How long have you known about the poisoning?" I asked, accepting the warm cup Malik offered, the question weighty with unspoken horrors. Rebecca sat down heavily, her hand unconsciously moving to cradle her stomach, a silent gesture revealing the deep impact of the revelation. 6 months, she finally said, her voice a low murmur. I found the video when I was going through the security footage, looking for something else entirely. At first, I couldn't believe it, even knowing everything Jessica had done, all the lies and manipulations. I never thought she'd go that far. It was beyond anything I could have imagined. The very next morning, my phone rang at an ungodly 6 a.m. It was our mother, her voice hysterical, barely coherent through her sobs. Jessica, it turned out, had shown up at their house at midnight, demanding they help her, dragging the confused and crying children along. David hadn't come home, and Jessica had discovered, to her utter shock and fury, that he had emptied their joint savings account before the business accounts, entangled in David's own fraudulent dealings, were finally frozen solid. I met Rebecca for breakfast later that morning to update her on the unfolding disaster. She listened calmly, stirring her decaf coffee, her expression unperturbed. "She's going to escalate," Rebecca stated matter-of-factly, her tone devoid of surprise or emotion. Jessica never learned how to lose gracefully, or at all. This is just the beginning of her unraveling, and she was absolutely right. By noon, Jessica had called me a staggering 17 times. Her voicemails began with desperate, pleading tones, quickly transitioning to angry accusations, and finally morphing into outright threats. She claimed she possessed more recordings, more damaging secrets, and warned that she would ruin all of us if we didn't come to her aid, failing to grasp that she had already done irreparable damage. That afternoon, Rebecca invited me to her home office, a space that was less an office and more a command center. The walls were meticulously covered with intricate timelines, stacks of legal documents, and dozens of photographs, all interconnected with strings and notes. It looked precisely like a seasoned detective's investigation board, a testament to years of meticulous preparation. "I've been preparing for this exact moment, for 2 years," she explained, her gaze sweeping over the vast array of evidence. Every single move Jessica might make, every conceivable lie she might concoct. The therapist into thinking you were the victim. "And now you're going to stay far away from me and my family, understand?" A chilling silence hung in the air, taut with unspoken threats. "Or what?" Jessica snarled, her voice a low, venomous growl. The carefully constructed facade, the sweet sister act she had perfected over years, finally crumbled completely, revealing the raw malice simmering beneath. "Or what?" she repeated, a cruel smirk twisting her lips. "You'll release edited recordings, won't you? You truly believe you've won this little game? Think again. I'll destroy you, Rebecca. I'll make absolutely sure that everyone, every single person we know, understands what kind of truly despicable individual you really are." She practically vibrated with a dark, triumphant energy, convinced she held all the cards in her meticulously manipulated deck. But Rebecca, with a quiet composure that belied the fury surely raging within her, simply pulled out her phone. Her thumb moved with deliberate precision, bringing up one final video, a silent, damning testament to Jessica's depravity. It was Jessica herself, looking almost nonchalant, sitting in what appeared to be Rebecca's very own bedroom. In her hand, she casually held a small, innocuous-looking bottle of pills. "These should do it," Jessica's recorded voice murmured, chillingly casual, emanating from the phone's speaker. "A few of these in her smoothie, and bye-bye, baby. She just think it's another miscarriage." Poor Rebecca, the words hung in the air, a grotesque lullaby of malice, painting a picture of calculated cruelty that stole the breath from the room. A profound, suffocating silence descended upon the space, so absolute, so heavy, that even the distant wail of sirens from outside seemed to fade away. Swallowed by the sheer horror of what had just been revealed, the world outside ceased to exist. Only the icy grip of that confession remained, tightening around every throat. You recorded yourself planning to poison me, Rebecca said, her voice barely a whisper, yet it cut through the silence like a sharp blade. Her gaze, though quiet, was filled with an unyielding clarity that sliced through Jessica's remaining defenses. You recorded yourself actually doing it, and then, you kept the video. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word, the sheer audacity of it almost beyond comprehension. Why, Jess, she asked, the question laced with a morbid curiosity, an attempt to understand a mind so utterly twisted. The unspoken answer hung there, a monstrous truth, as a trophy. Suddenly, as if the ground beneath her had given way, Jessica's legs buckled. The fight, the snarl, the defiant energy it all evaporated in an instant. She collapsed, not gently, but like a puppet whose strings had been abruptly severed, falling heavily into her chair, her entire being deflated. All the venom, all the aggression, had drained out of her, leaving her a hollow shell, utterly exposed. I didn't mean it, she stammered, her voice thin and reedy, a pathetic attempt at denial. It wasn't supposed to. Wasn't supposed to what? The narrator interjected, their voice sharp, cutting through Jessica's feeble excuses. To kill my baby, just make me sick enough to have a miscarriage. What exactly was your plan, Jess? What twisted fantasy were you trying to fulfill? All for your own selfish gain. Our mother, who until then had been frozen in shock, finally broke. She started to sob, deep, gut-wrenching sobs, and for the first time in years, these were real tears, not the calculated, manipulative kind Jessica had wielded like weapons against us, but genuine anguish, born of a horrifying realization. My babies, she choked out, clutching herself, her voice raw with grief. What have you done? What have we done? The weight of their complicity, of years of enabling Jessica's escalating pathologies, seemed to crush her. You enabled a monster, the narrator stated flatly, their voice devoid of emotion, a stark pronouncement of truth that landed with brutal precision. And now you're finally seeing what monsters do when they believe they are invincible, when they think they can act with impunity, destroying everything and everyone in their path without consequence. David, who had been pale and rigid with a dawning horror, suddenly sprang up from his seat, a frantic energy seizing him. I need to go. I need to. The lawyers, I have to. His words tumbled out, disjointed and desperate, as he stumbled towards the door, his eyes wide with a profound, personal terror. But Malik's calm, steady voice stopped him dead in his tracks, a silent yet powerful lasso. I wouldn't go home if I were you, David, Malik said, his tone deceptively mild, yet carrying an undeniable weight that reverberated through the room. Samantha's there, along with her brothers. They're very protective of their pregnant sister, the one you so conveniently told you were getting divorced to marry. Each word was a calculated blow, a revelation of betrayal upon betrayal, painting a clear picture of David's impending doom. David's face, if it were even possible, went an even ghastlier shade of white. His body seemed to give out, and he slumped against the door frame, utterly defeated, the implications of Malik's words crashing down on him like a tidal wave of inescapable consequences. He was caught, exposed, and utterly alone, his carefully constructed life now a house of cards collapsing around him. Rebecca, meanwhile, moved with newfound purpose. She gathered her purse, her fingers firm, and took Malik's offered hand, a silent gesture of solidarity and unwavering strength. We're leaving now, she announced, her voice ringing with a chilling finality. She turned her gaze to Jessica, her eyes cold and unwavering. Jess, you have exactly 48 hours to get your cameras and any other surveillance devices out of my home. I've already changed the locks, so you'll need to call first. A security team will supervise your visit, just to ensure everything is removed properly and without incident. Rebecca, please, Jessica whispered, her voice a faint plea, a pathetic echo of her former defiance. I'm your sister. No, Rebecca said firmly, her tone leaving no room for argument, for negotiation, for any shred of doubt. You're merely someone who happened to share a womb with me. Sisters don't try to poison each other, risking murder. Sisters don't steal each other's fiancés, shattering relationships and trust with wanton disregard. Sisters don't cause miscarriages out of petty jealousy, demonstrating a profound lack of empathy. You are not my sister, Jessica. You're just someone I used to know, a ghost from a past I'm ready to bury and leave behind forever. She then turned her gaze to her parents, who sat huddled together, looking utterly lost and broken. And you too, she continued, her voice heavy with sorrowful resignation. I'm done hoping you'll ever choose me. Go ahead, choose your golden child. Live with that choice, embrace it, if you can. But know this, my children will never know you. They will never know the grandparents who stood idly by, passively enabling a monster, while one daughter systematically tried to destroy the other. As Rebecca and Malik walked purposefully toward the door, their steps resolute, their departure signaling an end, Jessica made one last, desperate, pathetic attempt to regain some semblance of control or inflict one final, venomous wound. You're recording this, too, aren't you? She shrieked, her voice cracking with desperation. This whole thing, you're just as bad as me, Rebecca, admit it. Rebecca paused at the threshold, turning to look back, her expression a mix of weary disdain and quiet triumph. The difference, Jess, she said, her voice clear and cutting, is that I'm recording evidence of your crimes. You, on the other hand, recorded yourself committing them. And for the record, she added a subtle, knowing smile playing on her lips. This isn't being recorded. I don't need to. Everyone here heard everything, didn't they? Mom, Dad, David, our sister. Everyone knows who you really are now. That, she concluded, her voice imbued with a chilling finality, is punishment enough. With that, she and Malik walked out, closing the door behind them, sealing off the wreckage of a family and a lifetime of lies. The silence that followed was not just quiet. It was deafening, a palpable void filled with the echoes of shattered lives and broken trust. Jessica remained at the table, slumped and defeated, staring blankly at her hands, as if searching for answers or absolution in her own palms. David stood frozen by the door, a statue of regret and panic, utterly immobilized. Our parents clung to each other, their faces etched with a profound sense of loss and irreparable damage, looking utterly broken, their world having just imploded around them. I stood up to leave, too, unable to bear another second in the suffocating aftermath of that house. Where are you going? My mother asked, her voice laced with a desperate plea for connection, for someone, anyone, to stay. To Rebecca's, I said simply, without hesitation, my voice firm with conviction. To celebrate the twins with my actual sister, the one who never tried to poison anyone. The one you should have protected, cherished, and stood by, instead of enabling her abuser for all these years, letting her fester into this monster. As I walked out, the sound of Jessica's sobs began to fill the quiet house. Not the fake, performative tears she had perfected over years of manipulation and calculated victimhood, but real, ugly, soul-deep crying. The kind that erupts when you finally realize you've systematically destroyed everything and everyone around you, leaving no one and nothing. And there's absolutely no one left to blame but yourself, trapped in the ruins of your own making. The ambulance, which had been a stark, flaring symbol of the morning's chaos, was thankfully gone when I stepped outside. The neighborhood was quiet, almost peacefully serene, bathed in the soft afternoon light. But inside that house, a family lay in ruins, irrevocably shattered. And for once, a strange, undeniable sense of justice permeated the air. The right person was finally, truly, paying the excruciating price for their monstrous deeds. I drove to Rebecca's house in a silence that mirrored the profound quiet of the suburban streets. My hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white as I meticulously processed the raw, brutal reality of what had just unfolded. The familiar, unassuming streets felt surreal, almost dreamlike, utterly disconnected from the emotional maelstrom we had just escaped. When I pulled into her driveway, I saw Malik's car already there, a reassuring presence, a symbol of stability. The porch light was on, a warm, inviting beacon that seemed to welcome me into a haven of safety and sanity, a sanctuary from the storm. Rebecca opened the door before I even had a chance to knock, as if she sensed my arrival, anticipating my presence. Her face bore the unmistakable signs of deep exhaustion, the strain of months of hidden torment. But beneath it, a profound sense of relief softened her features, a quiet victory. We embraced without words, a silent communion of shared trauma and hard-won triumph. And I followed her inside, where Malik was already in the kitchen. The comforting aroma of freshly brewed tea filling the air, a small normalcy in the wake of such upheaval. How long have you known about the poisoning? I asked, my voice barely a whisper, accepting the warm cup Malik offered. Rebecca sat down heavily on the sofa, her hand unconsciously moving to cradle her stomach, a silent gesture revealing the deep impact of the revelation, the constant, knowing fear she must have endured. 6 months, she finally said, her voice a low murmur, laden with the weight of her secret. I found the video when I was going through the security footage, looking for something else entirely, just routine checks. At first, I couldn't believe it. Even knowing everything Jessica had done, all the lies and manipulations, I never thought she'd go that far. It was beyond anything I could have imagined, a level of depravity I hadn't prepared for. The very next morning, my phone rang at an ungodly 6 a.m., jolting me from a restless sleep. It was our mother, her voice hysterical, barely coherent through her sobs, signaling another crisis of Jessica's making. Jessica, it turned out, had shown up at their house at midnight, demanding they help her, dragging the confused and crying children along, oblivious to the havoc she wrought. David hadn't come home, and Jessica had discovered, to her utter shock and fury, that he had emptied their joint savings account before the business accounts, entangled in David's own fraudulent dealings, were finally frozen solid, leaving her financially destitute. I met Rebecca for breakfast later that morning to update her on the unfolding disaster, Jessica's frantic calls, and escalating demands. She listened calmly, stirring her decaf coffee, her expression unperturbed, almost distant, as if she had predicted every word. She's going to escalate, Rebecca stated matter-of-factly, her tone devoid of surprise or emotion, simply stating an irrefutable truth. Jessica never learned how to lose gracefully, or at all. This is just the beginning of her complete unraveling, the inevitable fallout, and she was absolutely right. By noon, Jessica had called me a staggering 17 times. Her voicemails began with desperate, pleading tones, quickly transitioning to angry accusations, and finally morphing into outright threats. She claimed she possessed more recordings, more damaging secrets, and warned that she would ruin all of us if we didn't come to her aid, failing to grasp that she had already done irreparable damage, that her threats held no power over us anymore. That afternoon, Rebecca invited me to her home office, a space that was less an office and more a command center, a war room of information. The walls were meticulously covered with intricate timelines, stacks of legal documents, and dozens of photographs, all interconnected with strings and notes, like a vast, complex web. It looked precisely like a seasoned detective's investigation board, a testament to years of meticulous preparation. I've been preparing for this exact moment, for 2 years, she explained, her gaze sweeping over the vast array of evidence, a silent testament to her foresight and unwavering resolve. Every single move Jessica might make, every conceivable lie she might concoct, every possible manipulation. Let me tell you, I had already anticipated it. The moment she sat across from me, a heavy stack of folders thudded onto the table, each one a testament to Rebecca's meticulous, almost chilling, collection of undeniable proof. Within those manila covers lay a devastating chronicle, crisp bank statements unequivocally detailing Jessica's calculated theft from David's accounts. A labyrinth of incriminating text messages exchanged between Jessica and her carousel of affair partners. And perhaps most disturbing of all, audio recordings. These weren't just snippets. They were chillingly clear instances of Jessica, in her own voice, actively coaching her young, impressionable children on precisely how to be cruelly dismissive and overtly hostile towards Rebecca at various family gatherings. Could anyone truly fathom such a level of manipulation directed at one's own offspring? But the absolute worst part, Rebecca declared, her voice heavy with a profound sorrow as she deliberately pulled out yet another, thicker folder, is what she's systematically done to those kids. She has, without a shred of remorse, been wielding them as emotional weapons, mere instruments in her schemes, ever since they drew their first breaths. The weight of those words hung in the air. A testament to a deeply ingrained pattern of abuse. 3 days unfolded in a fragile, almost unnatural quiet. It was the kind of deceptive calm before a storm, a brief, tense interlude during which we all held our breath, instinctively knowing that Jessica's next inevitable move was merely lurking in the shadows. And then, true to form, she unleashed it. Jessica, seizing an opportunity for maximum public spectacle, descended upon Malik's prestigious investment firm Her Children, looking confused and somewhat bewildered, reluctantly in tow. She orchestrated an unholy commotion right there in the polished, hushed lobby, her voice rising to a shrill crescendo as she publicly, vehemently, and wildly accused Malik of systematically destroying her family, of ruthlessly stealing from innocent children. The scene was nothing short of a theatrical meltdown, a grotesque pantomime that compelled security personnel to intervene and physically escort her, still spewing invectives, from the premises. Not, however, before a significant number of Malik's high-profile clients had borne witness to the entire, mortifying spectacle, their hushed whispers and raised eyebrows speaking volumes. Malik returned home that evening, the lines of stress etched deeply into his face for the very first time since this whole nightmare had begun. His shoulders seemed to carry an invisible burden. She's not just trying to cause drama, he confessed to Rebecca, his voice laced with a weary frustration. She's deliberately attempting to sabotage my professional reputation. My partners, as you can imagine, are decidedly unhappy about this. This public drama, Rebecca, her heart aching for him, reached out and gently squeezed his hand, a silent gesture of empathy and support. Oh, Malik, I'm so incredibly sorry, she murmured, her eyes clouded with guilt. I never, ever wanted any of this to spill over and affect your work. Malik, however, met her gaze with unwavering resolve. Hey, he stated firmly, his grip tightening on her hand. We are in this together, remember? I knew exactly who Jessica was, what her nature entailed when I married you. This is absolutely not your fault. Her actions are her own, but even as he offered that comfort, a palpable sense of dread lingered, for it was clear, Jessica, in her relentless pursuit of chaos, was far from finished. The very next day, a fresh wave of digital malignancy surfaced. Jessica, operating under a veil of meticulously crafted fake names, launched a barrage of social media accounts. Her objective, to systematically disseminate Rebecca's most intimate personal information across the online landscape. She meticulously crafted and shared twisted, malevolent versions of their shared childhood, painting Rebecca as a venomous, jealous sister who had always, supposedly, harbored a bitter resentment for Jessica's triumph. The audacity escalated further. She even brazenly posted photos from Rebecca's initial wedding planning, audaciously asserting that Rebecca had stolen every single one of those cherished ideas directly from her. I found myself enslaved to my screen for hours, relentlessly reporting these venomous accounts, only to watch in mounting frustration as new ones, like digital hydra heads, sprang up almost immediately in their place. Through it all, Rebecca maintained an almost superhuman calm, a remarkable composure amidst the digital storm. She methodically documented every single transgression, every hateful post, every fabricated narrative. Let her continue to dig her own grave with every hateful word, she declared, her voice steady and resolute. Every single post, every baseless accusation, is simply more irrefutable evidence of her relentless harassment building our case. A week later, Jessica, ever the chameleon of cruelty, pivoted to a different, far more insidious approach. She manipulated the children into calling Rebecca, their young voices imbued with a faint sorrow as they cried about how profoundly they missed their auntie, Becca. The 4-year-old's voice, tragically, was unmistakably coached, an innocent puppet reading verbatim from a script Jessica had meticulously penned. Mommy says, the child's voice typed, a heartbreaking echo of Jessica's malice. You hate us now. Why don't you love us anymore? The sheer, gut-wrenching emotional manipulation proved too much. Rebecca, visibly shattered, had to abruptly leave the room after that call, her composure finally fracturing. It was the very first time I had witnessed her cry since this entire agonizing ordeal began. Those were just kids, she whispered, her voice raw with pain, tears tracing paths down her cheeks. They truly don't deserve any of this. Meanwhile, a less dramatic but equally chaotic subplot was unfolding with David, who had inexplicably resurfaced. He had, it turned out, been temporarily holed up with Samantha, the pregnant woman he had ostensibly been seeing. However, that precarious arrangement spectacularly imploded when, in a scene that could have been ripped from a daytime soap opera, two other of his various girlfriends suddenly descended upon Samantha's apartment. The resulting, explosive confrontation, a cacophony of accusations and fury, was not only widely discussed but also, to David's utter mortification, immortalized on neighborhood social media pages, complete with grainy videos of him being comically, yet desperately, chased down the street by three absolutely incandescent women. He called me, his voice a pathetic cocktail of desperation and fear. "You have to help me talk to Rebecca," he pleaded, the sheer terror in his voice palpable. This entire situation has spiraled completely out of control. "I'll do anything, absolutely anything, to make it stop." My response was immediate and unyielding. "You made your choices, David," I reminded him, my voice devoid of sympathy. "You systematically destroyed your own life with your actions." Rebecca merely held up a mirror, reflecting the consequences of your own making. Our parents, bless their hearts, found themselves agonizingly caught in the crossfire. They were simultaneously housing a volatile Jessica and the children, all while attempting to mentally process the truly horrifying revelation about the poisoning. Mom, particularly, called me daily, her emotional state a bewildering pendulum swing. One moment she'd be defensively rationalizing Jessica's actions, she was probably just joking in that video, right? The next she'd be expressing utter horror, how could she possibly do that to her own sister? The internal conflict was tearing her apart. 2 agonizing weeks into this swirling vortex of chaos, Jessica, in a stunning display of hubris, made her single biggest, most catastrophic mistake. With an audaciousness that defied belief, she contacted Rebecca's fertility doctor, brazenly posing as Rebecca herself in a brazen attempt to illicitly access her private medical records. Fortunately, the clinic, a bastion of professionalism, had stringent protocols firmly in place to guard against such breaches. They immediately, and commendably, notified Rebecca of the attempted identity theft and medical record breach. This pivotal incident, rather than a mere family squabble, finally gave Rebecca precisely the unassailable legal ammunition she so desperately needed. Identity theft, along with the attempted unlawful access of private medical records, were not mere domestic disputes. They were undeniably serious criminal offenses. With calculated precision, Rebecca filed a police report, finally and formally involving the authorities, but she did so specifically for these concrete, legally actionable incidents. Not the sprawling, amorphous mess of broader family drama. It was a strategic, decisive move. Jessica, predictably, descended into a full-blown panic. She materialized at my apartment at 2 a.m., a wide-eyed apparition, pounding relentlessly on my door, her frantic thuds echoing ominously through the quiet building. "You have to make her stop," she shrieked, her voice raw and ragged, piercing the silence of the night. "I'm your sister, too. How can you possibly take her side over mine?" Without so much as unlatching the door, I calmly dialed building security. As the guards gently but firmly escorted her away, Jessica continued her unhinged tirade, screaming vitriolic threats about utterly ruining my life as well. How she supposedly possessed damaging information about me that would irrevocably destroy my career. Empty threats, born of desperation, certainly. But the resounding reverberations of her outburst ensured that every single one of my neighbors had, unfortunately, heard every single word. The very next morning, the legal hammer fell. Rebecca's lawyer, with chilling precision, dispatched a meticulously crafted cease and desist letter to Jessica. The document was a comprehensive, damning indictment outlining in excruciating detail every single incident of harassment, every single threatening message, every calculated attempt to irrevocably damage both Rebecca's and Malik's hard-earned reputations. It left no room for doubt, no crevice for denial. Jessica's immediate, and entirely predictable, response was to pivot back to her well-worn playbook of manipulation. She tried to coerce our vulnerable parents into taking out a substantial loan to help her. Her fabricated plea was that she urgently needed the money for a lawyer to fight Rebecca's lies. But then, in a moment that truly stunned me, Dad, displaying a backbone I hadn't witnessed in my entire memory, unequivocally refused. "We have enabled you, indulged you, and supported your destructive behavior for far too long," he declared, his voice firm and unwavering. "You poisoned your own sister. You even recorded yourself doing the unthinkable. There is, quite simply, no excuse for that kind of depravity. This stark, unprecedented rejection from our father utterly broke something fundamental within Jessica. Her subsequent decisions became increasingly erratic, spiraling into genuine instability. She abruptly pulled the children out of school, wildly claiming that Rebecca had spies infiltrating the classrooms. She then abruptly moved out of our parents' house, dragging the confused, disoriented kids with her to a squalid motel, further plunging them into a state of bewildering instability. Inevitably, Child Protective Services became involved. The school, concerned by the children's unexplained absences and Jessica's increasingly erratic and concerning behavior, had no choice but to file a report. This intervention, crucially, was not at Rebecca's instigation, yet Jessica, in her distorted reality, predictably blamed Rebecca for it anyway. The social worker who visited the motel room discovered the children existing in utter chaos, subsisting on a steady diet of unhealthy fast food for every single meal, while Jessica, utterly consumed by her own manufactured victimhood, spent her days meticulously creating more fake social media accounts and recording rambling, delusional videos about how she was being ruthlessly persecuted by everyone around her. During this tumultuous period, Rebecca, with remarkable strength and resilience, focused inward, directing her energy towards the delicate miracle of her pregnancy. The immense, sustained stress of the ongoing nightmare was visibly affecting her health, and her doctor, recognizing the gravity of the situation, put her on partial bed rest. I made it a point to spend most evenings at her house, not just helping with practical matters like preparing meals, but simply being a steady, reassuring presence. During these precious visits, a silent pact was formed. We deliberately, consciously avoided all mention of Jessica's name or her escalating madness. Instead, we found solace and hope in planning for the arrival of the twins, joyfully discussing baby names, and losing ourselves in the comforting distraction of mindless TV shows. But Jessica, a relentless force of disruption, simply would not allow us to have even that fragile peace. Through some unknown, disturbing means, she discovered the location of Rebecca's doctor's appointments and began to brazenly show up at the medical building. She wouldn't directly approach Rebecca. Instead, she would simply stand in the parking lot, a chillingly still and ominous figure, silently watching. It was profoundly unsettling, a deeply invasive form of psychological harassment. Recognizing the escalating threat, Moloch immediately hired private security to accompany Rebecca to all her subsequent appointments, ensuring her safety and peace of mind. Jessica, in a final, desperate act of manipulation, filmed the security guards and then, with characteristic self-victimization, posted the videos online, claiming Rebecca had hired thugs to intimidate her. However, the comment section on these videos yielded a response that was decidedly not what Jessica had anticipated. The vast majority of people, seeing through her transparent manipulation, vehemently called her out for the deeply disturbing act of stalking a pregnant woman. And so, 3 weeks deep into this unrelenting nightmare, David's meticulously constructed life, once a gleaming facade of success, spectacularly imploded around him. The corporate board, their faces grim and unyielding, didn't just dismiss him. They officially severed all ties, publicly announcing his termination for egregious embezzlement, a devastating blow that stripped him of his professional identity and reputation in one swift, brutal motion. Simultaneously, his personal finances became an immediate casualty, his assets summarily frozen pending a thorough investigation, leaving him adrift in a sea of uncertainty. As if the professional devastation wasn't enough, personal calamities began to cascade. Samantha, the woman he'd been secretly involved with, gave birth to their daughter, a fragile new life bringing with it an immediate and unyielding demand. She promptly filed for child support, further tightening the financial noose around David's already beleaguered neck. Compounding his woes, other women he'd been seeing, now emboldened by Samantha's actions and perhaps sensing his vulnerability, came forward with their own litany of claims and accusations. He was, quite literally, facing an insurmountable tide of financial ruin, and economic quicksand pulling him down from multiple, unforeseen directions. In a move that stunned everyone, perhaps even himself, David, cornered and desperate, did something utterly unexpected. He walked into a police station and, without prompting, confessed everything. The intricate web of his marital infidelities, the calculated acts of embezzlement that had cost him his career, and even his chilling prior knowledge of Jessica's insidious plans to harm Rebecca. He offered to become a key witness, to testify against Jessica, hoping this profound act of disclosure would secure him a measure of leniency on his own mounting charges. The revelation of David's treachery struck Jessica like a physical blow. She learned of his stunning betrayal not from him directly, but from the arrival of the stoic detectives at her unassuming motel room, their stern questions piercing the thin veneer of her temporary refuge. And what unfolded next, as chillingly documented in the police report I would later review, was a visceral explosion of unrestrained fury. She didn't merely get angry, she completely, terrifyingly lost control. Objects became projectiles, lamps, alarm clocks, anything within reach rolled across the room with desperate force, shattering against walls as she unleashed a torrent of incoherent screams. Guttural cries that spoke of pure, unadulterated rage and despair. The most heartbreaking aspect, her own children, innocent and terrified, were trapped spectators to this horrifying spectacle, their wide eyes reflecting the escalating chaos. This domestic maelstrom, witnessed firsthand by authorities and documented in stark detail, proved to be the absolute final, undeniable straw for Child Protective Services. Their decision was swift and uncompromising. They immediately removed the children from Jessica's custody, placing them temporarily with our parents while the harrowing investigation into their mother's increasingly erratic behavior continued. Predictably, Jessica, in her warped perception of reality, blamed Rebecca for this devastating loss too, even though Rebecca had absolutely nothing, not a single thing, to do with David's confession or the subsequent intervention by Child Services. That very night, hours after the children had been escorted away, Jessica sent one last, chilling message to Rebecca. It wasn't a text or a call, but a disturbing video clip. Rebecca saw her sister, a silhouetted figure standing precariously on the edge of a towering bridge, threatening to jump into the dark abyss below if Rebecca didn't immediately call off the lawyers and capitulate to her demands for money. Rebecca, her heart pounding with a mixture of dread and alarm, wasted no time. She instantly dialed emergency services, who, responding with impressive speed, located Jessica at the threatened spot and, thankfully, safely took her for an urgent psychiatric evaluation. During Jessica's mandatory 72-hour hold for observation, a flood of unsettling truths came to light, painting an even darker picture of her internal struggles. The examining psychiatrist, through careful assessment and probing questions, unearthed the revelation that Jessica had been clandestinely consuming David's ADHD medication for years, systematically mixing it with alcohol and other illicit substances. Her profoundly erratic and increasingly aggressive behavior, it became agonizingly clear, was at least partly fueled by this dangerous cocktail of substance abuse. While this discovery offered a partial explanation for her volatility, it by no means absolved her of the calculated cruelty she had consistently inflicted upon others. Our parents, during this agonizing period, aged visibly, the lines of worrying etched deeper onto their faces. They, too, sought therapy, finally, bravely confronting the uncomfortable reality of how their lifelong favoritism towards Jessica had inadvertently created, or at least significantly exacerbated, this catastrophic situation. We always gave Jessica what she wanted, Mom confessed to me tearfully, her voice thick with regret. We thought we were just keeping the peace. But in truth, we were just teaching her that she could hurt people without ever facing any real consequences. When Jessica was eventually released from her psychiatric hold, she found herself truly, utterly alone for the first time in her life. David was gone, consumed by his own spiraling legal battles, the distant, fading echo. Her children, the very anchors of her existence, were living with her parents, who had, with immense pain but undeniable firmness, established strict boundaries regarding her access to them. Her once loyal circle of friends had utterly evaporated, completely distancing themselves after witnessing her increasingly public and alarming social media meltdowns. Even Marcus, the married lawyer she'd been having an affair with, had, perhaps unsurprisingly, filed a restraining order against her after she showed up at his house in a furious confrontation with his unsuspecting wife. Stripped of everything, Jessica relocated to a smaller, nondescript motel and, in a stark testament to her new reality, secured a job at a local grocery store, her first steady, real employment in years. She continued posting videos online, a desperate cling to her former manufactured celebrity, but they grew increasingly incoherent, more rambling, a confused jumble of grievances and victimhood. Her dwindling followers, bored and disengaged, steadily lost interest in her tired, fabricated drama, turning their attention elsewhere. Meanwhile, Rebecca's pregnancy, a beacon of hope amidst the storm, progressed steadily. The twins, defying the immense stress their mother endured, were growing beautifully, robustly. She and Malik had lovingly transformed their spare bedroom into a serene nursery, painting the walls a soft, calming yellow, accented with crisp white trim. I remember helping them assemble the crypts one afternoon, and for a few precious hours, we could almost pretend that everything in the world was normal, that the shadow of Jessica didn't loom. But normal, we all knew, was still a distant, elusive dream. Jessica, ever the master of intrusion, discovered Rebecca's baby registry online. What followed was a disturbing campaign of harassment. She began ordering various baby items to be delivered directly to Rebecca's home. But each package arrived with a deeply unsettling note attached. For the babies you stole from me, one read, "It's venom unmistakable." Another chillingly stated, "Hope these replace the ones that didn't make it." A direct and cruel jab at Rebecca's past miscarriage. Rebecca was forced to embark on an emotionally draining task, contacting every single store on her registry to block Jessica's insidious access. It was exhausting, this constant vigilance, this relentless need to defend against these small, yet profoundly impactful, acts of psychological warfare. Yet, Rebecca, with remarkable resilience, remained methodical. She meticulously documented every single incident, every note, every package, steadily building an unassailable case against her tormentor. 6 weeks after that fateful dinner confrontation, Jessica, in one final, desperate, and ultimately self-destructive play, contacted a tabloid journalist. Her offer, to sell her sensationalized story about the evil sister who, in her twisted narrative, had utterly destroyed her life. She confidently provided the journalist with the very recordings she'd secretly made, convinced they would expose Rebecca and Malik as criminals. The journalist, however, had a far more astute and discerning eye. Instead of the exposed Jessica envisioned, they were far more interested in Jessica's own damning admissions captured within those recordings. The resulting article, a brutal and unexpected twist, focused squarely on Jessica's shocking confession to poisoning her own pregnant sister. In her desperate attempt to frame Rebecca, Jessica had, with a tragic irony, accidentally handed them irrefutable evidence of her own heinous crimes. When that devastating article was published, Jessica's last vestiges of support completely evaporated. The few remaining individuals who had clung to her victim narrative, swayed by her incessant social media cries, were utterly horrified by her own recorded words, admitting to causing Rebecca's miscarriage. Even in the shadowy corners of the internet, where she had once found a sympathetic echo chamber, the tide irrevocably turned against her. Our parents, finally reaching the absolute limit of their endurance, took decisive, painful action. They filed for temporary custody of Jessica's children, initiating the arduous legal process of permanently protecting them from their mother's destructive influence. It was a heart-wrenching decision for them, tearing at the fabric of their family, but they recognized with stark clarity that those innocent children desperately needed stability, safety, and a chance at a normal life. Jessica's response to this profound loss and legal action was to violate the existing cease and desist order with spectacular, unbridled defiance. She didn't just ignore it, she openly flouted it. She brazenly showed up at Rebecca's house one evening while I was there for dinner. She didn't bother to ring the doorbell, but simply stood in the front yard, a haunting, silent sentinel, staring fixedly at the illuminated windows. When Malik, his patience finally worn thin, went outside to tell her to leave, she unleashed a torrent of shrill screams, accusing Rebecca of having utterly ruined her life, of having stolen absolutely everything from her. The neighbors, accustomed to the quiet suburban evening, immediately called the police, their peace shattered. As the officers arrived on the scene, Jessica, ever the performer, pulled out her phone and began live streaming, hysterically claiming she was being arrested for the unpardonable crime of loving her sister too much. The officers, maintaining a professional demeanor but unwavering in their resolve, were firm she was clearly violating a legal order. She needed to leave the premises immediately or face arrest. Jessica, seemingly relishing the public spectacle, chose arrest. As they clicked the handcuffs around her wrists, she stared directly into her phone's camera, her eyes blazing with a mixture of defiance and despair. "Rebecca, I know you're watching," she declared, her voice laced with venom. "This isn't over. You took everything from me. My husband, my children, my life. I'll never stop making you pay." But even as the defiant words left her lips, one could discern the profound, inescapable defeat in her eyes. She had, in every conceivable sense, lost everything. Not because Rebecca had maliciously taken it, but because she had, through her relentless lies, her calculated cruelty, and her tragic inability to ever accept responsibility for her own destructive actions, utterly dismantled and destroyed it herself. I stayed with Rebecca that night, sensing her profound need for company and reassurance. She was understandably shaken by Jessica's public and terrifying appearance, but also surprisingly, strangely calm. I knew it would eventually come to this, she quietly mused, her voice low. Jessica always has to have the last word, even when she's already lost. This dramatic arrest, a direct violation of her cease and desist order, meant concrete, inescapable legal consequences. Jessica spent that night in jail, a stark and lonely reality, and was released on bail the following morning. Our parents, finally, unequivocally drawing firm, unyielding boundaries, refused to pay her bail, leaving her to face the immediate repercussions of her actions completely on her own. The crushing weight of David's actions meant Rebecca found herself entangled with a bail bondsman. A bewildering and utterly unwelcome new layer of financial strain layered upon a foundation of already crumbling solvency. Could things truly get any worse? This unexpected, hefty fee felt like a cruel irony, another wound inflicted on her already bleeding bank account, all while she grappled with the emotional fallout of David's betrayal. The relentless stress, a constant, gnawing presence, was visibly taking its toll on Rebecca, eroding her peace and her physical well-being. The stark reality hit hard during her next checkup. Her doctor's brow furrowed with palpable concern as he reviewed the charts. Rebecca's blood pressure, typically stable, was now dangerously erratic, a stark reflection of her internal turmoil. The fear wasn't just for herself, but for the precious lives growing within her. The ominous shadow of early labor loomed large. The verdict was absolute, complete, unwavering bed rest for the agonizing remainder of her pregnancy. Her once vibrant life, filled with preparations and anticipation, was suddenly confined to the four walls of her bedroom. Her only companions, the quiet tick of the clock and the relentless thrum of anxiety. Malik, ever the steadfast partner, immediately took time off from his demanding work schedule, stepping into the role of devoted caregiver, attending to Rebecca's every need. Recognizing the depth of their predicament, I rearranged my own commitments, meticulously carving out time to be there during the days when Malik simply couldn't, ensuring she was never truly alone. During this unexpected, almost forced respite, a period of quiet reflection born of necessity, Rebecca finally began to unravel the tightly wound ball of pain she carried for so long. One afternoon, the words, heavy with years of unspoken hurt, began to spill forth, painting a stark, chilling portrait of Jessica's profound and pervasive betrayal. It wasn't just David, she confessed, her voice thick with a sorrow that transcended mere anger. It was everything. Every boyfriend I ever had, every achievement I worked tirelessly for, every single, fleeting moment of genuine happiness. She simply wouldn't, stand to see me possess anything that wasn't hers. Rebecca then pulled out old, tattered diaries from her high school days, their pages yellowed with age, yet still pulsating with raw, documented proof. Within those fragile covers, Jessica's systematic, insidious campaign to undermine her sister was meticulously detailed, a chilling blueprint of calculated malice. Teachers Jessica had charmed with a deceptive innocence, subtly poisoning their perceptions of Rebecca, leading to unfairly assigned lower grades. Imagine the sting, the bewilderment of seeing a B or C when you knew you'd earn an O, all because Jessica had whispered a few poisonous words into the ear of an impressionable educator. Friends, once loyal and cherished, had been painstakingly turned against her with carefully placed, insidious lies, fragmenting Rebecca's social world piece by piece. I genuinely believed that getting away, going off to college, would finally sever the toxic ties, Rebecca continued, a sigh escaping her lips, heavy with the weight of past naivety. But she followed me. She applied to the exact same school, brazenly using my meticulously crafted essays, somehow gaining admission. She then infiltrated my sorority, mimicking my interests, infiltrating my safe space. And the ultimate slap in the face. She even dated my ex-boyfriends after I had broken up with them, a twisted, perverse act designed purely to prove she could, to demonstrate her continued power over my life. Even from a distance, the pattern was no longer ambiguous. It was stark, horrifyingly clear, and deeply disturbing. Jessica's entire identity, it seemed, was not self-generated, but rather built solely around the parasitic act of taking, of diminishing, of siphoning everything from Rebecca. Without that dark dynamic, that constant target, she didn't seem to know who she was, a ship without a rudder. And now, with virtually nothing left for her to take, Rebecca believed Jessica was finally truly falling apart. 2 months after the agonizing confrontation, the inexorable wheels of justice began to turn, bringing legal consequences to everyone involved. David, facing overwhelming evidence, decided to plead guilty to the embezzlement charges. He received a 2-year prison sentence, though it was widely anticipated he'd likely serve significantly less time with good behavior and participation in prison programs. His pivotal testimony against Jessica, a final act of self-preservation, was, of course, a crucial component of his plea deal. Jessica's own trial, a much more complex web of charges encompassing identity theft and harassment, was formally set for the following month. Her public defender, a weary voice of reason, strongly advised her to accept a plea deal, outlining the precariousness of her position. Yet, with a stubborn, almost delusional conviction, Jessica vehemently refused. She insisted on her day in court, genuinely convinced she could somehow manipulate the jury, twisting the narrative to portray herself as the real victim in this elaborate tragedy. Our parents, caught in an agonizing moral quandary, grappled with the profoundly difficult decision to testify against their own daughter. They had already provided detailed statements to the authorities regarding the horrifying poisoning video and Jessica's chilling confession, laying bare her monstrous actions. But actually taking the stand, looking their child in the eye while condemning her, felt like an unbearable, final betrayal of their parental duty. Their compassionate therapist, however, offered a crucial perspective, helping them reframe their painful choice. Testifying, she explained, wasn't about choosing sides in a petty squabble. It was fundamentally about protecting their vulnerable grandchildren from further harm and, most importantly, about holding Jessica accountable for the egregious, far-reaching consequences of her actions. It was about justice, not just family loyalty. During this period of intense emotional turmoil and legal uncertainty, the unthinkable happened. Rebecca went into early labor. The relentless, crushing stress had finally overwhelmed her body's heroic ability to protect the delicate pregnancy. I was right there, by her side, when her water broke, a horrifying 5 weeks before her official due date. The subsequent rush to the hospital was a blur of terror and urgency. Rebecca's grip on my hand like a vice, her whispered please, not again. Please, not again, echoing my own unspoken fears. But this time, against all odds, a different narrative unfolded. Though premature, born 5 weeks before their due date, the twins, a precious boy and a resilient girl, arrived, small but miraculously healthy. They spent 2 weeks under the vigilant watch of the NICU, tiny warriors in incubators, yet, to everyone's immense relief, without any serious complications. They were a testament to life's tenacity, a radiant beacon of hope. Rebecca and Malik, seeking a fresh start untainted by the family's toxic past, bestowed upon them names imbued with new beginnings, Alexandra and Nicholas. No connection, no shadow of the past family drama would touch these innocent new lives. Jessica, ever vigilant, discovered the joyous births through her insidious trawling of social media. Someone, perhaps an acquaintance, had posted heartfelt congratulations on Malik's company page, a public outpouring of well wishes. Her reaction, however, was predictably twisted. She sent a card directly to the hospital, its contents a venomous antithesis to celebratory greetings. Congratulations on stealing my life so completely, it read, chillingly. Enjoy my leftovers. Hospital security, with remarkable foresight, intercepted the malicious card, recognizing its sinister intent, and promptly added it to the burgeoning evidence file for Jessica's impending trial. Even in what should have been Rebecca's most sacred, joyful moment, a time of profound new beginnings, Jessica simply couldn't resist her insatiable need to inflict pain, to cast a dark shadow over even the purest light. As the twins finally came home, settling into the comforting rhythm of a new routine, the wider extended family, for the first time in what felt like forever, slowly began the arduous process of healing. Our parents, having been granted temporary custody of Jessica's now traumatized children, diligently worked with dedicated therapists. Their mission, to meticulously undo the profound psychological damage inflicted by their mother's relentless manipulation, to dismantle the insidious narrative she had woven. The children, still fragile but gradually more open, slowly began to understand, perhaps for the first time, that true love didn't manifest as hurting others. That genuine family connection meant unwavering support, not cruel sabotage. From behind prison walls, David sent a letter of apology to Rebecca. It was rambling, laced with a heavy dose of self-pity. Yet, amidst the excuses, he did, crucially, acknowledge the immense pain he had caused her. Rebecca read it once, her gaze unreadable, then, without a word, crumpled it and tossed it into the waste bin. He's not worth the energy, she declared, her focus now, unequivocally, on her precious babies and the bright and burdened future she was determined to build. Meanwhile, Jessica's world continued its rapid, irreversible contraction, shrinking like a deflating balloon. She lost her job, an inevitable consequence of repeatedly missing shifts for court appearances, her professional life crumbling. Her motel, her last semblance of independent living, finally kicked her out for chronic non-payment, leaving her adrift. In desperation, she moved in with a distant cousin, a well-meaning but ill-informed relative who hadn't heard the full, sordid story. This arrangement, however, lasted less than a week. The cousin, prompted by a vague unease, simply Googled Jessica's name and was immediately confronted by a deluge of sensational tabloid articles, revealing the shocking truth. The night before her trial, in one final, desperate, and utterly predictable attempt at manipulation, Jessica called her parents. Her voice, choked with theatrical sobs, claimed deep remorse, insisted she had gotten help, and was better now. She begged them, pleaded with them, to drop the charges, to grant her another chance. One they, with a quiet strength born of painful experience, gently refused, explaining with unwavering clarity that the charges weren't theirs to drop, that the state had taken over. She exploded in a familiar, unbridled rage. It was a terrifying, stark reminder that, beneath the veneer of manufactured remorse, nothing had truly changed. The trial itself was swift, almost merciful in its efficiency. The evidence arrayed against Jessica was not merely compelling. It was overwhelming, a tidal wave of incontrovertible proof. Her own meticulously recorded videos, originally intended as blackmail tools against Rebecca, now became irrefutable proof of her litany of crimes. Her social media posts, archived and presented, displayed a clear, disturbing pattern of obsessive harassment. The identity theft at the medical office, a cold, calculated act, was thoroughly documented and utterly undeniable. Against her lawyer's frantic advice, Jessica insisted on taking the stand. She attempted to paint herself as a loving, long-suffering sister driven to the brink of desperation by Rebecca's supposed cruelty. But under the relentless, incisive cross-examination, her carefully constructed narrative began to fracture, then utterly collapsed. She couldn't logically explain the sickening poisoning video. She couldn't rationally justify the cold, calculated act of identity theft. Her tears, once her most potent weapon, her go-to tactic for eliciting sympathy and manipulating perception, now seemed hollow, manipulative, and utterly transparent to every single person watching, eroding any last shred of credibility. The jury, faced with such a mountain of evidence and Jessica's self-incriminating performance, deliberated for less than 2 hours. The verdict was unanimous, unequivocal, guilty on all counts. The judge, his voice heavy with the gravity of the crimes, specifically noted the particular cruelty of attempting to poison a pregnant woman and the sustained, tormenting nature of the ongoing harassment. He sentenced Jessica to 18 months in prison, followed by 3 years of stringent probation. Crucially, she was also ordered to have absolutely no contact with Rebecca, Malik, or their children, a necessary safeguard for their newfound peace. As they led Jessica away, her wrists bound, she turned to look at Rebecca one last time. The hatred in her eyes, a familiar, burning intensity, was now strangely mixed with something else. Confusion, perhaps, a profound, almost childlike bewilderment. As if, even in this stark, undeniable moment of consequence, she still couldn't truly grasp how her entire lifetime of calculated manipulation, of taking and tormenting, had finally, inexorably, led her to this desolate end. Rebecca didn't attend the sentencing hearing. She was home, cradling her beautiful twins, diligently, lovingly building the very life Jessica had tried so desperately, so maliciously, to destroy. When I relayed the verdict to her later, she simply nodded, a quiet, almost serene affirmation. It's over, she whispered, her voice barely a tremor in the hushed room, a fragile sound that seemed to absorb all the lingering tension. Finally, truly, irrevocably over, yet a chilling certainty settled in the pit of our stomachs, a quiet, almost collective understanding that this was merely the end of a particularly harrowing chapter, not the definitive conclusion of the entire saga. Could true closure ever really be attained when such deep, foundational wounds had been inflicted upon a family? Jessica, the architect of so much suffering, would indeed serve her sentence behind cold, steel bars, but the prison gates would inevitably swing open for her one day. She would then face the daunting, perhaps impossible, task of rebuilding a life from the desolate ruins she herself had meticulously created. Would this crucible of consequence forge genuine introspection and hard-won lessons, perhaps even remorse? Or would the isolation and enforced humility simply curdle into an even more venomous, festering bitterness, poisoning any conceivable chance of redemption? The answer, like a shadow, remained stubbornly out of reach, a source of persistent unease, and one of the innocent casualties in this deeply personal war of wills. Her children, tragically, would forever carry the indelible knowledge that their own mother had, with chilling deliberation, chosen a path of relentless cruelty over the sacred, fundamental bonds of family. These weren't superficial scrapes that would fade with time. These were profound, jagged scars etched deep into their nascent souls, destined to remain, perhaps softening around the edges, but never truly vanishing. How does one truly, fully heal from such a profound betrayal, a laceration of the spirit inflicted so early in life? Still, amid the lingering shadows of past trauma and the weighty burden of uncertainty, a different tableau unfolded before my eyes, offering a fragile flicker of hope, tenacious as a desert flower. I watched Rebecca, a vision of nurturing grace and quiet strength, holding her precious babies close, their tiny forms a balm to her weary heart, while Malik, ever the steady, unwavering anchor, moved with purposeful calm in the kitchen, the comforting aroma of dinner beginning to gently waft through the air. In their shared tranquility, a nascent resilience, a quiet, profound defiance against the darkness, began to visibly bloom. Rebecca, our quiet warrior, had not merely endured but had survived the very worst of Jessica's relentless, venomous attacks, emerging from the crucible scarred but fundamentally unbroken. She had, with fierce maternal instinct and unwavering self-possession, painstakingly erected an impenetrable shield around herself and her cherished family. With every fiber of her being, she had defiantly refused to allow Jessica's corrosive poison, both the literal threats and the figurative venom of psychological warfare, to utterly decimate her hard-won chance at genuine, untainted happiness. It was a victory not of aggression, but of an enduring spirit, a testament to her unshakable will. The grand, intricate tapestry of our family, once seemingly whole and harmonious, would, we knew with a bittersweet certainty, never truly be what it once was. The fragile, meticulously constructed illusion of harmony had been irrevocably shattered into countless jagged pieces, replaced now by something raw and varnished, and brutally honest, a truth that, while undeniably more painful in its stark revelation, held the promise of profound liberation. Could it be that this uncomfortable authenticity was, in fact, a superior, more resilient foundation upon which to build? Perhaps confronting the unvarnished truth, however hideous its visage, was not merely a necessary evil, but the very first, courageous step toward genuine, lasting healing. As the evening shadows lengthened and I finally departed from the sanctuary of Rebecca's home, my mind, almost involuntarily, began to trace the starkly divergent paths these two sisters, once bound by an undeniable genetic tie, had ultimately chosen for themselves. Rebecca, with a wisdom born of quiet strength and profound empathy, had unequivocally chosen love as her guiding star, meticulously constructing a vibrant, fulfilling life with Moloch, her unwavering partner, and their beautiful, innocent children. Jessica, on the other hand, had succumbed entirely to the corrosive, self-devouring allure of hate, becoming a relentless force of pure destruction. Leaving nothing but scorched earth and broken spirits in her wake, her every action fueled by an insatiable, consuming need to inflict pain upon her sister. The devastatingly clear consequences of these profound, life-altering choices now lay exposed for all to see, undeniable and stark in their contrast. Rebecca, bathed in the warmth of genuine affection and unwavering support, was surrounded by a loving family, diligently laying the foundational stones for a bright, hopeful future, rich with potential. Jessica, in a chilling and pitiable contrast, found herself utterly alone, imprisoned not only by bars but by her own corrosive choices, staring blankly at the desolate ruins of the very life she had so painstakingly demolished with her own misguided, destructive hands. It was, undeniably, a form of justice imperfect, perhaps, and certainly not the storybook ending of a complete triumph, but in its raw, unfiltered reality, it was profoundly, undeniably real. As I finally reached my car, the air was filled with the familiar, comforting sounds of the twins' cries, not wails of distress or pain, but simply the normal, vibrant symphony of a healthy, bustling family, demanding attention, asserting their very existence in the world. Through the softly illuminated window, I could clearly discern Moloch and Rebecca, a steady and quiet collaboration, moving with synchronized grace as they worked together to attend to their children's needs, a seamlessly united team, bound not by mere obligation, but by an unbreakable tether of deep love and a shared, profound purpose. This serene domestic scene, this profound, intertwined partnership, this quiet harmony, this was precisely what Jessica, in her relentless, destructive quest, had so desperately tried to steal. And more tragically, what she had never, not truly understood in her cold, calculating heart. Real love, the kind that anchors and elevates, wasn't a commodity to be ruthlessly seized from others. It was, rather, a sacred, dynamic process of meticulously building something beautiful, something enduring, together, brick by painstaking brick, through shared effort and mutual devotion. As my car pulled away, leaving the warmth and security of their home behind, a sober realization settled upon me. The immediate battle might have concluded with Jessica's sentencing, but the hard times, the protracted trials, were far from truly over. Looming on the horizon were inevitable appeals, contentious probation hearings, and the relentlessly ongoing, arduous challenge of safeguarding the children, those innocent souls, from the insidious, lingering tendrils of their mother's destructive influence, a poison that sought to reach beyond prison walls. Yet, a quiet, reassuring confidence bloomed within me, rooted firmly in Rebecca's undeniable resilience. She had faced the very depths of her sister's malice, stared unflinchingly into the abyss of her worst machinations, and had not only survived but had emerged from that harrowing ordeal profoundly, undeniably stronger, tempered by fire, her spirit unbent. The very edifice of the family we had known, the one in which we had grown up, was irrevocably gone, utterly annihilated by Jessica's calculated choices and, let's face it, our parents' complicit enabling of her destructive patterns. But from those smoldering, bitter ashes, something entirely new, something profoundly different, was unmistakably beginning to sprout and flourish. This nascent family was not built on the shifting sands of pretense, but on the unyielding bedrock of truth. Not on the flimsy fabric of excuses, but on the solid, unshakable foundation of accountability. It wasn't perfect, no, for perfection is a myth, but it possessed an undeniable, palpable reality. And for the first time in what felt like an eternity, that raw, imperfect reality felt not just sufficient, but truly, deeply enough. The very next morning, a mere handful of hours after Jessica's sentencing had been delivered, shattering whatever fragile peace we might have hoped to reclaim, I awoke to the insistent, jarring vibration of my phone, a deluge of texts streaming in from an unidentified, ominous number. These cryptic messages, I soon discovered, originated from the sister of Jessica's new cellmate, brazenly offering her services as a clandestine courier of communications for a price, of course. A cynical transaction in the currency of malice. My thumb hovered, then pressed, immediately blocking the offending number. But to my dismay, the digital onslaught proved relentlessly persistent. Throughout the day, a barrage of similar texts continued to pour in, each emanating from a different, fresh phone number. It became chillingly clear, Jessica, with her boundless, insidious capacity for malice, had already found a cunning, almost terrifyingly resourceful way to perpetuate her campaign of harassment, even from the seemingly impenetrable confines of her prison cell. Was there truly no limit to her reach, her poison? Rebecca and Malik, understandably overwhelmed by this renewed assault, made the immediate, difficult decision to abandon their current phone numbers, severing that direct conduit of torment. Yet, Jessica's malevolent reach, it soon became terrifyingly apparent, stretched far beyond mere phone calls or texts. With manipulative cunning, she had convinced another inmate to enlist their family members on the outside to orchestrate a new digital offensive. A spate of fresh social media accounts suddenly materialized, anonymously dedicated to posting old, seemingly innocuous photos of Rebecca and David, but accompanying them with venomous captions about true love stolen by jealous sisters, a narrative of victimhood and slander. These posts weren't random, scattershot attacks. They were surgically precise, meticulously targeting and tagging Rebecca's professional colleagues, Malik's esteemed business partners, and even, most disturbingly, the pediatrician entrusted with the tender care of their beloved twins. It was a vile, public smear campaign designed to inflict maximum reputational damage, a digital poison seeking to contaminate every aspect of their lives. Meanwhile, our parents, caught in this cruel and bewildering crossfire, discovered with dismay that Jessica had been relentlessly calling them collect multiple times a day, leaving a grotesque tapestry of voicemails that eerily alternated between saccharine, tearful apologies and chilling, vicious threats. When they finally, and understandably, ceased accepting her calls, the deluge merely shifted medium. She began writing letters, dozens of them, a relentless paper storm that often saw 5 or even 6 arriving in a single post. These weren't mere ramblings of a troubled mind, they were disturbing manifestos, containing chillingly detailed plans for what she intended to do upon her eventual release, how she would reclaim her children, how she would ensure Rebecca paid for her perceived transgressions. A dark blueprint for future vengeance. One particular letter, however, sent a profound cold shiver down our father's spine, unsettling him more deeply than any other missive. In its chilling contents, Jessica meticulously described observing Rebecca's house, detailing the precise times Malik departed for work, even noting the specific moments of my visits, and the exact schedule of mail delivery. The unnerving accuracy of these details transcended mere guesswork. It spoke of a deliberate, sustained surveillance from the outside, a shadowy, malevolent presence observing their daily lives. Who was her informant? How was she still pulling these insidious strings from behind bars, orchestrating such a meticulous campaign of terror? That someone on the outside, the clandestine source of her terrifyingly precise intelligence, eventually revealed himself to be a man named Claus. Jessica had cultivated this disturbing connection through the unlikely medium of a prison pen pal website, a digital lifeline to the world beyond her cell, where she sought new instruments of her will. He had become her devoted, if profoundly misguided, confidant, visiting her regularly, lavishing her with commissary money, and, most damningly, whispering promises of assistance in her relentless, vengeful campaign against Rebecca. He was her pawn, her seemingly malleable weapon, eager to be wielded in her continued torment of our family. The full, disturbing extent of this arrangement only came to light when Claude, a figure of unsettling persistence and utterly devoid of self-awareness, brazenly appeared on our parents' doorstep. He claimed Jessica had dispatched him to collect her belongings, an inventory that bizarrely included cherished family photo albums and, even more unsettlingly, Rebecca's old school yearbooks, items clearly not belonging to Jessica, but rather to the family she sought to dismantle. Our father, his instinct screaming danger and his jaw clenched, staunchly refused him entry, but Claus was not so easily deterred. He returned the following day, and the day after that, transforming into a sinister, silent sentinel, parking his car outside their house for hours on end, simply watching. A chilling tableau of menace. When Mom, her nerves sprained to breaking point, finally summoned the police, Claus, with an alarming lack of understanding, calmly insisted he was merely visiting his fiancé's family. It then emerged, with a sickening twist, that Jessica had apparently accepted his marriage proposal during a jailhouse visit. A shocking development considering she had known him for less than 2 months. The speed and intensity of their romance painted a disturbing picture of calculated manipulation, a strategic alliance born of shared darkness. Forced to confront this escalating and deeply unsettling menace, Rebecca, ever pragmatic and resolutely protective, immediately engaged a private investigator to delve into Claus's murky background. What the investigator unearthed was profoundly disturbing, painting a portrait of a calculated predator. Claus possessed a chilling, repetitive history of attaching himself, with parasitic precision, to incarcerated women, systematically draining their unsuspecting families of money with false, manipulative promises to aid their imprisoned loved ones. He bore the ignominious distinction of having 3 separate restraining orders filed against him by the families of previous fiancés, a clear pattern of predatory behavior. Whether Jessica remained blissfully ignorant of this alarming pattern or, more likely, simply didn't care, blinded by her own venom, was ultimately a moot point. She had found her willing accomplice, a malleable weapon she could wield from behind bars, someone eager to execute her venomous designs on the outside world. But the investigators' findings extended beyond Claus's sordid past, revealing another, equally insidious layer to the conspiracy. Claus had been actively contacting David's former mistresses, tirelessly attempting to dredge up any salacious dirt or compromising information he could use against Rebecca and Moloch. While most of these women, thankfully, had wisely refused to engage with his manipulative overtures, one individual, a woman named Victoria, had proven susceptible to his machinations. She had been covertly feeding Claus a steady stream of intelligence, lured by Jessica's tantalizing promise of a significant sum of money, funds she asserted she would have soon upon her release. This sordid arrangement perfectly explained the unnerving, almost clairvoyant accuracy of the details that had appeared in Jessica's menacing letters. Meanwhile, the true, innocent victims of Jessica's relentless vendetta, her own children, were demonstrably struggling, unraveling under the immense psychological strain of their fractured reality. The oldest had begun to suffer from tormenting nightmares, his small voice piercing the night as he cried out for mommy in his sleep, a plaintive echo of his profound confusion and loss. The middle child, once vibrant and outgoing, had retreated into a profound withdrawal, refusing to utter a single word at school, his silence a stark, heartbreaking testament to his internal turmoil and trauma. And the youngest, barely 2 years old, with an heartbreaking innocence that belied the chaos surrounding him, persistently, repeatedly, asked the agonizing question, when is mommy coming home? Our parents, bless their hearts, were doing their absolute best, offering what comfort and stability they could. But it was painfully clear that these children, scarred and confused, required a depth of specialized help that extended far beyond what any family, however loving, could unilaterally provide. Faced with this heartbreaking reality, Rebecca, demonstrating an extraordinary empathy that transcended her own personal pain, made a truly difficult, yet profoundly compassionate, decision. Despite the strictures of the no-contact order designed to protect her from Jessica's malice, she felt an undeniable, almost visceral, responsibility for the well-being of her nephews and niece. While direct interaction remained impossible, a cruel barrier imposed by Jessica's own actions, Rebecca immediately moved to establish robust education funds for each child, a tangible investment in their uncertain futures, and further arranged for a dedicated child psychologist to begin working with them weekly. While the hefty bills for these crucial sessions were technically addressed to our parents, it was Rebecca, with her characteristic quiet strength and unwavering resolve, who meticulously managed their payment. She handled every invoice discreetly, never once seeking acknowledgement or praise, a testament to her profound selflessness in this harrowing ordeal. Meanwhile, Klaus, Jessica's unhinged accomplice, escalated his campaign of harassment with terrifying audacity. He began a chilling routine of appearing at Moloch's esteemed law office, feigning legitimate business proposals. Each visit was a thinly veiled attempt to disrupt Moloch's professional life, a theatrical performance of malice. When the building's diligent security personnel, already familiar with his unwelcome presence, firmly turned him away, Klaus wouldn't simply retreat. Instead, he'd lurk ominously in the multi-story parking garage, transforming into a sinister storyteller. He'd approach Moloch's bewildered colleagues, weaving elaborate, venomous tales about how Moloch, the supposed villain, had ruthlessly destroyed an innocent family. One can only imagine the discomfort and confusion this created among professionals trying to go about their day. Predictably, several of Moloch's valued clients soon expressed their profound concern, their trust perhaps shaken by these unsettling rumors. The whispers grew loud enough that Moloch's partners called an urgent meeting to address the escalating, deeply unprofessional situation. How would Moloch navigate this treacherous terrain, where personal demons bled into professional reputation? He handled it, quite simply, brilliantly. With a calm, almost surgical precision, he laid out every piece of damning evidence, the meticulously documented restraining orders against Klaus, the irrefutable proof of Jessica's criminal conviction, the voluminous evidence detailing her heinous crimes. His partners, initially perhaps skeptical or annoyed, were utterly appalled not at Moloch, but at the sheer, unimaginable lengths Jessica was willing to go, even from behind prison bars, to continue her reign of terror. Their initial concern quickly morphed into righteous indignation. They immediately authorized hiring additional, round-the-clock security and issued an unequivocal, permanent ban against Klaus from entering the building's premises. For a fleeting moment, we all breathed a collective sigh of relief, believing this formidable legal and security shield might finally deter him. But Klaus, a relentless tormentor, was far from finished. His next chilling move struck at the very heart of Rebecca and Moloch's fragile peace. He appeared at the twins' daycare. With an unnerving coolness, he claimed to be their uncle, attempting to gain access to the vulnerable children. Thankfully, the daycare staff, well-trained and vigilant, followed their strict protocol and immediately telephoned Rebecca. Her heart pounding with a primal fear, Rebecca raced to the daycare only to arrive and find Klaus engaged in a heated, public argument with the distraught director. He stood there, defiant, belligerent, insisting with maddening conviction that he possessed an inherent right to see his family. The police were called, and he was arrested for trespassing. A small, temporary victory for us, but to our dismay, the justice system, in its slow-moving way, released him within a mere few hours, leaving us feeling exposed and terribly vulnerable once more. That same night, the insidious creep of fear truly invaded their sanctuary. Rebecca discovered Klaus in her own backyard, a silent, predatory shadow. He was brazenly taking photos through the windows of their home, using a powerful telephoto lens to invade their most private moments. My husband, Mick, a fierce protector, gave chase, his furious shouts echoing through the night. But not before Klaus, fleeing into the darkness, flung back a chilling parting shot. A prophecy of unending torment. Jessica will never stop fighting for what was hers. The entire terrifying encounter, including Klaus's desperate threat, was captured with chilling clarity by their newly installed security system. This time, the evidence was undeniable, leading to Klaus's arrest for stalking, a more serious charge. Yet, even from the confines of his jail cell, his malignant influence persisted, a testament to his manipulative genius. He somehow managed to circumvent the prison's monitoring system, passing Jessica's venomous letters, along with the insidious photos he had taken, to other inmates and visitors for mailing. These photos, a perverse collection of mundane stolen moments, depicted Rebecca innocently shopping at the grocery store, Malik refilling his car at a gas station, and even me, unknowingly walking into my own apartment building. Our lives, it seemed, were an open book to our tormentors. Our beloved parents were, quite visibly, at their absolute breaking point. Mom, once so robust, had developed debilitating anxiety attacks, flinching and jumping with a gasp of terror every single time the doorbell dared to ring, each chime a potential harbinger of dread. Dad, a man of quiet strength, now slept with a heavy baseball bat beside his bed, a desperate, anachronistic gesture against an invisible, omnipresent threat. They adored Jessica's children, their own grandchildren, with every fiber of their being. But they felt agonizingly trapped, caught in an unbearable crucible between their sacred duty to protect these innocent souls and their primal need to protect themselves from their own daughter's monstrous, escalating campaign of terror. It was a suffocating, soul-crushing dilemma. Then came the true, irreversible breaking point, a moment etched forever into our memories. Jessica's cellmate, now released, materialized on Rebecca's porch, a grim messenger of unspeakable dread. She stood there, a conduit for Jessica's malice, deliberately reading aloud from a crumpled paper clutched in her hand, the words unmistakably in Jessica's own chilling handwriting. Each sentence was a hammer blow to Rebecca's heart. I know where the twins go to daycare. I know what time you pick them up. I know the route you take home. Klaus will be watching, always watching. Give me my children back or I'll take yours. The last sentence, a direct, visceral threat against Rebecca's own babies, hung in the air, thick with unspeakable horror. It was a declaration of war, a promise of unimaginable violation. Rebecca, trembling but resolute, immediately called the police. The woman on the porch was swiftly arrested for communicating threats, but the profound, irreparable damage had already been done. The terrifying specificity of Jessica's message shattered any remaining illusion of safety. Without hesitation, Rebecca and Malik pulled the twins from daycare, recognizing that their previous security measures were woefully inadequate. They hired round-the-clock, professional security personnel, a constant, watchful presence, and installed a network of additional cameras, strategically positioned to cover every conceivable angle of their property, creating an impregnable fortress against the unseen. The relentless, pervasive stress, a toxic miasma, began to profoundly affect every single one of us. Rebecca's milk supply, a biological response to profound anxiety, tragically plummeted, making the already challenging task of feeding the twins an emotionally grueling struggle. Malik, plagued by visions of Klaus lurking in the shadows, developed severe insomnia, compulsively checking the live security feeds multiple times each night. A desperate vigil against an ever-present fear. Even I, the narrator, found myself succumbing to a creeping paranoia, meticulously varying my routes to their house, constantly glancing in my rearview mirror, haunted by the chilling possibility of being followed. Our parents, once vibrant, now seemed to age years in mere weeks. The profound strain of protecting Jessica's innocent children, while simultaneously living in abject fear of their own daughter, etched into every new line on their faces, visible in their weary eyes. 3 months into Jessica's sentence, however, a critical mistake on her part offered a glimmer of hope. In her desperate attempts to continue orchestrating harassment from within, she had been corresponding with multiple men through various prison pen pal websites, spinning elaborate lies and promising each of them different, tantalizing things in exchange for their assistance. Her intricate web of deceit, however, proved too complex for her to manage from behind bars. When, by a cruel twist of fate, 2 of her pen pals showed up to visit on the same day, a volatile fight erupted in the sterile, unforgiving environment of the visiting room. Both men were arrested, and as a direct consequence of her reckless manipulation, Jessica's male visiting privileges were immediately revoked. It was a small, yet significant, victory, a momentary disruption to her carefully orchestrated chaos. Stripped of her primary conduit for orchestrating harassment from within the prison walls, Jessica's already fragile composure began to unravel. She grew visibly desperate, her strategic cunning replaced by raw, unbridled frustration. In a bizarre attempt to control her fate, she started picking fights with other inmates, clearly hoping that these infractions would lead to additional charges, thereby extending her sentence and delaying the inevitable, the eventual end of her term. However, the shrewd warden, a veteran of countless inmate manipulations, saw through her transparent plan. Instead of granting her the additional charges she so perversely craved, Jessica was placed in solitary confinement ostensibly for her own protection, a darkly ironic twist for someone who reveled in inflicting terror. Klaus, meanwhile, had also faced his own reckoning. He had brazenly violated his bail conditions by attempting to contact Rebecca's family once more. As a result, he was sentenced to a well-deserved 6 months in jail, a brief but satisfying taste of justice. But not before, in one final, chilling act of defiance, he managed to dispatch a package to Rebecca's house. Inside, a horrifying trove awaited, hundreds upon hundreds of photos he had meticulously, obsessively taken over many months. These weren't mere snapshots. They were a perverse chronicle of their lives, the family enjoying a fleeting moment in parks, shopping at stores, sharing meals at restaurants. The level of detail was disturbing, truly obsessive. On the back of each photo, Klaus had scrawled unsettling notes, describing their activities with chilling precision, a terrifying personal dossier of their every move. These photos, far more than mere images, became irrefutable evidence. The diligent prosecutor, armed with this disturbing collection, swiftly filed additional, grave charges against both Klaus and Jessica. Among them were conspiracy to commit kidnapping, a direct consequence of Jessica's terrifying threat to take yours, criminal harassment, and stalking by proxy, acknowledging Klaus's role as an extension of Jessica's malevolence. If convicted, these charges alone had the potential to add years, even decades, to Jessica's already substantial sentence, offering a tangible hope for prolonged peace. Faced with the daunting prospect of even more time behind bars, Jessica's public defender, a pragmatist, skillfully convinced her to consider a plea deal. In a strategic maneuver, in exchange for the dropping of the most severe charge, the kidnapping conspiracy, Jessica reluctantly pleaded guilty to the harassment and stalking charges. As a result, her existing sentence was extended by an additional 3 years, and, perhaps most crucially, she was transferred to a high-security facility located a formidable 500 miles away. This geographical isolation made it immeasurably harder for her to maintain her local connections, effectively severing the lifeline she had previously used to orchestrate her terror. It was a hard-won victory, a critical step towards genuine safety. In a decision that weighed heavily on their hearts, our parents bravely chose to file for permanent custody of Jessica's children. The court proceedings that followed were nothing short of heartbreaking. The oldest child, still so young yet forced to bear such a heavy burden, bravely testified via closed-circuit television, his voice a fragile thread of truth. He recounted, with chilling honesty, his mother's insidious behavior, describing how she had deliberately taught him to lie about Rebecca, poisoning his innocent mind. He revealed the gut-wrenching moment she had twisted his perception, telling him, "Aunt Rebecca stole Daddy." The judge, visibly moved by the child's testimony, granted permanent custody to our parents, ensuring stability and safety for the traumatized children. Furthermore, Rebecca and Malik were wisely named as legal guardians, a critical safeguard should anything ever happen to our parents. David, the children's biological father, languishing in prison, signed away his parental rights without a single contest. He wanted absolutely nothing more to do with the children or the suffocating chaos Jessica had so cruelly created. His only desperate request, a poignant symbol of his despair, was that his name be somehow removed from their birth certificates, a legal impossibility, of course, but a powerful testament to how profoundly he yearned to erase his entire connection to Jessica and the nightmare she embodied. With Klaus finally incarcerated and Jessica's ability to communicate severely limited by her distant transfer, life tentatively, slowly began to stabilize. Rebecca and Malik, ever vigilant, wisely maintained their robust security measures, but with a newfound confidence, they also began venturing out more, reclaiming small pieces of their stolen freedom. The twins, once shrouded in the shadow of fear, began to joyously reach their developmental milestones, their first radiant smiles, the triumphant rollovers. Their enchanting babbling, all the normal, precious baby things that, after months of crisis and terror, felt like monumental, hard-won victories. I, too, found solace in contributing to this nascent peace. I helped our parents lovingly redecorate Jessica's children's rooms, meticulously removing every single lingering reminder of their chaotic, traumatic past, replacing them with vibrant, comforting colors and cozy furniture, creating spaces that truly felt safe, permanent, and filled with the promise of stability. The children, remarkably resilient, responded profoundly well to this newfound stability and the gentle guidance of therapy. The oldest, once haunted by unseen monsters, finally stopped having nightmares, his nights now peaceful. The middle child, who had retreated into a painful silence, slowly began talking again, his voice a balm to our ears. And the youngest, bless her innocent heart, adapted quickly and seamlessly, naturally calling our parents grandma and grandpa without any prompting. A beautiful testament to the power of love and nurture. 6 months after Jessica's transfer to the distant facility, we received unexpected, rather perplexing news. She had been placed on suicide watch. Not, as we were informed, because she was genuinely suicidal, but because she had been threatening self-harm, not out of genuine despair, but as a calculated ploy to manipulate staff into ceding to her demands for privileges. These were not desperate cries for help, but rather a chilling display of strategic emotional blackmail. An attempt to leverage the system's inherent duty of care against itself for trivial gains like extra phone calls or different meal choices. The psychiatrist's report, when it finally emerged, was unequivocally damning, a stark and clinical indictment of her character. It painted a portrait of a patient who showed no flicker of genuine remorse for the catastrophic wreckage she'd left in her wake. Instead, she continued, with an almost pathological insistence, to externalize all blame, meticulously constructing elaborate narratives where everyone else was the architect of her misfortunes, and she merely the innocent victim. The report meticulously detailed her persistent, deeply ingrained antisocial behavior patterns, a complete disregard for rules, a profound lack of empathy, and an unwavering commitment to self-interest above all else. Faced with this grim reality, Rebecca made yet another profoundly difficult decision, one that weighed heavily on her conscience and tested the limits of her compassion. It wasn't an easy choice. It felt like a desperate gamble, a quiet acknowledgement of the unyielding shadow Jessica cast. She initiated contact with the prison authorities, not directly, but through her legal team, extending a formal offer to shoulder the financial burden for Jessica to receive proper, intensive psychiatric treatment. Why would she do such a thing for the woman who had so brutally betrayed her? The answer, ironically, had nothing to do with Jessica herself. It was a selfless act born entirely for the sake of Jessica's children, those innocent souls who, Rebecca deeply believed, deserved at least the faint possibility of a mother who might, someday, even if decades down the line, evolve into a person capable of forming healthy, reciprocal relationships. It was a carefully calibrated gesture, made through lawyers, meticulously maintaining the crucial no-contact order while simultaneously, paradoxically, extending a lifeline of help. Jessica, however, predictably, scornfully refused. Word came back through her own lawyer, laced with a familiar venom. She didn't need help, she declared, her self-perception remaining utterly unblemished. It was Rebecca, she insisted, who was twisted by jealousy and blinded by vindictiveness, the one truly in need of therapeutic intervention. Even when confronted with the crushing weight of her actions, the undeniable consequences that had reshaped her entire existence, she remained steadfastly incapable of admitting even the slightest fault, a fortress of denial impenetrable by reality. Meanwhile, a world away from prison walls, the children continued to flourish, blossoming under the loving, stable care of our parents. It was a testament to their resilience and the nurturing environment provided. The oldest, once withdrawn, discovered the camaraderie and simple joy of joining Little League, his shy smiles growing brighter with each successful hit. The middle child, with quiet intensity, unearthed a profound love of art, her canvases exploding with colors and shapes, a vibrant escape. And the youngest, brimming with newfound curiosity, excitedly embarked on the adventure of preschool, each day bringing new discoveries and friendships. Rebecca and Malik, ever vigilant, were scrupulous in maintaining careful boundaries around the children, protecting their peace. Yet, they thoughtfully wove them into the fabric of family gatherings, ensuring they grew up enveloped in a cocoon of unwavering love. A clear understanding that despite the profound failures and profound absence of their biological parents, they were cherished, valued, and unequivocally belonged. A year into Jessica's extended sentence, Klaus, her former accomplice and enabler, was finally released. He vanished almost immediately, seemingly evaporating from the state, his trajectory as predictable as it was pathetic. He apparently found yet another vulnerable, incarcerated woman to entwine himself with, repeating his parasitic pattern like a broken record. The existing restraining orders remained firmly in place, a legal shield against any potential resurgence, but his swift departure brought a palpable, collective sigh of relief. It was one less menacing shadow to monitor, one less unpredictable variable in an already complex equation. Jessica, ever resourceful in her malevolence, soon discovered fresh avenues through which to inflict trouble and emotional distress. From the confines of her prison cell, she embarked on a campaign of legal harassment, filing a bewildering flurry of frivolous lawsuits. Rebecca was targeted for alienation of affection, a claim so absurd it bordered on comical. Our parents were accused of kidnapping her children, a monstrous distortion of their loving guardianship. And Malik's thriving company became the target of an outrageous accusation of conspiracy to commit fraud. Each suit, as expected, was summarily dismissed as baseless and vexatious. Yet they still demanded a response, still consumed precious money, and, perhaps most painfully, still devoured countless hours of energy and peace of mind. It was a constant, draining battle against her relentless vindictiveness. Not content with legal skirmishes, she also began crafting a self-aggrandizing memoir, a fantastical account of her wrongful persecution. She found, unsurprisingly, a vanity publisher willing to print anything for a fee, no questions asked. When excerpts of this self-pitying magnum opus began to surface online, they were so transparently, so outrageously fabricated, so utterly detached from reality, that even the few remaining, long-suffering supporters Jessica had managed to cling to finally, definitively distanced themselves. The book painted her as the ultimate victim of an expansive, shadowy conspiracy with Rebecca, in a truly breathtaking twist of psychological projection. Cast as the diabolical mastermind who had supposedly plotted her sister's downfall since childhood, pulling invisible strings with an almost supernatural malevolence. The situation escalated dramatically when the publisher, in a morally reprehensible attempt to drum up publicity for a planned sequel, brazenly tried to interview Jessica's children. This abhorrent act ignited a furious, protective instinct in our parents, compelling them to seek and obtain a restraining order directly against the publisher. The children's therapist provided crucial testimony, unequivocally stating that any exposure to their mother's deeply entrenched delusions and distorted narratives would catastrophically unravel years of painstaking therapeutic progress. The judge, recognizing the immense psychological vulnerability of the children, concurred, imposing strict and unyielding limits on any future mention of the children in Jessica's venomous writings. Meanwhile, a different kind of life was unfolding. Rebecca's twins blossomed into curious, joyful toddlers, their very existence a vibrant counterpoint to the darkness. They took their first wobbly steps, uttered their first delightful words, and began to reveal their distinct, charming personalities. Alexandra, with her bright, flashing eyes, was bold and fearlessly adventurous, eager to explore every corner of her world. Nicholas, on the other hand, was thoughtfully cautious, observing with a quiet intensity before venturing forth. Watching them grow, witnessing their pure, unadulterated joy and endless capacity for wonder, felt like undeniable proof that life, despite everything, could indeed move forward. That Jessica's poison had not, in the end, infected every single aspect of their existence. It was a powerful, comforting affirmation of resilience. However, the insidious reminders of Jessica's shadow persisted, a subtle but constant undercurrent of vigilance. Every legal document pertaining to the children, from custody agreements to educational waivers, had to be meticulously, painstakingly worded. Each clause scrutinized to prevent Jessica from discovering or exploiting potential loopholes. Every routine school registration necessitated uncomfortable, abbreviated explanations about complex custody arrangements. And every medical appointment meant updating stringent security protocols, a necessary unsettling measure to prevent any unauthorized, potentially malicious access to the children's sensitive records. Malik's business, against the backdrop of these personal trials, not only weathered the early challenges but thrived spectacularly. His partners, deeply impressed by the unwavering integrity and clear-headed strength he had demonstrated in navigating such a profoundly personal and public crisis, rewarded him with expanded responsibilities and greater influence. He, in turn, leveraged his growing success to forge an impenetrable bulwark of financial security for both sets of children, meticulously establishing irrevocable trusts that Jessica, with all her machinations, could never touch, even after her eventual release. I, in the midst of this ongoing saga, found myself unconsciously stepping into the role of the family historian, carefully, systematically documenting the unvarnished truth. This was not done with any malicious intent to poison the children against their biological mother, but rather to ensure that when they eventually reached an age of understanding, they would possess a factual, coherent record. It was a preemptive strike against Jessica's inevitable attempts to rewrite history, to recast herself as the wronged heroine. The children's therapist wholeheartedly endorsed this endeavor, explaining that having a clear, honest, and well-substantiated record would be an invaluable psychological tool, empowering them to process their incredibly complicated family dynamics with clarity and resilience as they entered adulthood. 2 years into her extended sentence, the inevitable, yet surprisingly official, happened. Jessica was formally diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder by the prison psychiatrist. The diagnosis, confirming what we had all known for years, surprised absolutely no one in the family except, of course, for Jessica herself. In a characteristic outburst of egocentric fury, she promptly fired her lawyer for, in her delusional estimation, failing to prevent the evaluation. She continued, steadfastly and defiantly, to refuse any form of treatment, clinging to the baseless conviction that there was fundamentally nothing wrong with her that the mere act of getting her children back wouldn't instantly, magically fix. Our parents, in the quiet hours, still struggled profoundly with the profound, aching guilt. They often wrestled with agonizing what-if scenarios, wondering if different choices made earlier might have somehow averted this tragic outcome. Their therapist, with gentle wisdom, helped them navigate this emotional minefield, guiding them to understand that while their enabling behaviors had certainly contributed to Jessica's self-destructive path, her ultimate choices were fundamentally and unequivocally her own. They were lovingly reassured that no amount of parental love, however boundless or fierce, could have magically transformed her into a different person. Rebecca, remarkably, rarely spoke about Jessica anymore, as if to acknowledge her existence was to grant her power. When the topic did arise, she would simply, distantly, state that her sister was away and then, with a quiet firmness, steer the conversation in an entirely different direction. Yet, I knew the truth. She covertly, regularly checked the prison website, monitoring Jessica's release date with a meticulous vigilance, preparing, with a grim and weary pragmatism, for the inevitable return. The children, in a testament to the love and stability surrounding them, grew demonstrably more resilient with each passing year. They understood, in age-appropriate terms, that their mother was in prison, but the harrowing details, the emotional complexities, remained carefully shielded from them. Their therapists continued to advise a delicate balance, unwavering honesty, tailored to their developmental stage, so they could grasp that their mother had made deeply unfortunate choices, but without branding her, irrevocably, as an inherently bad person. It was a painstaking, often agonizing, balancing act protecting their innocent hearts while simultaneously preparing them, gently and steadily, for the possibility of future contact, if Jessica ever truly, genuinely changed. 3 more years quietly slipped by, marked by an unexpected and grim turn of events. Klaus, the ever-present low-level threat, died tragically in a drunk driving accident, his reckless life culminating in a sudden, violent end. His death, while shocking, effectively removed one potential future source of chaos and danger from our lives. Soon after, David, the children's biological father, was released on parole. He, too, immediately left the state, seemingly desperate to sever all ties with his former life, a life he wanted no part of. He never, not once, attempted contact with any of his children, biological or otherwise, his absence of quiet, yet profound, finality. Jessica's behavior within the prison system, outwardly at least, showed a gradual, calculated improvement. This newfound compliance, however, stemmed not from any genuine personal growth or transformative change, but from a coldly pragmatic realization good behavior was the fastest, most reliable path to an earlier release, she diligently attended all required programs, securing a coveted position in the prison library, and meticulously avoided any major infractions. Yet, the letter she continued to dispatch to our parents, filled with their familiar, unshakable delusion, revealed her true and changed thoughts. They were dense with elaborate, fantastical plans for regaining full custody of her children, for somehow forcing Rebecca to pay for her crimes, and for reclaiming what she adamantly, delusionally, referred to as her stolen life. As Jessica's release date loomed ever closer, casting a long, unsettling shadow, Rebecca and Malik began their elaborate, almost military-style preparations. They upgraded security systems, fortifying their home with an almost desperate resolve. Restraining orders were meticulously renewed and reinforced, and detailed, comprehensive safety plans were meticulously drafted, covering every conceivable scenario. The children's schools were discreetly, but thoroughly, notified. Jessica's photo circulated to all staff members with a quiet, yet urgent, warning. It felt, to Rebecca, like preparing for an oncoming storm, an absolutely necessary, but utterly exhausting, endeavor. Our parents, seeking a haven of greater peace and security, made the difficult decision to move. They found a house nestled within a gated community, 2 hours away, far enough to effectively discourage any casual harassment or impulsive appearances from Jessica, yet still close enough to steadfastly maintain their cherished family connections. The children, remarkably resilient as always, adjusted well to their new surroundings, quickly making new friends and thriving in their new schools, their laughter once again filling the air. Rebecca, with a heavy heart, assisted with the move, carefully packing away years of accumulated memories, all the while trying desperately not to dwell on the agonizing question of why this uprooting had become so profoundly necessary. In what was once Jessica's old room, she discovered a forgotten box overflowing with childhood photographed images of the 2 sisters, side by side, at boisterous birthday parties, on sun-drenched family vacations, at awkward school events. Memories of a time before everything went catastrophically wrong. She kept just one, a faded snapshot, and tucked it away in a hidden drawer, a poignant reminder of a bond that had once been, of the person Jessica used to be, before the darkness consumed her. A reminder of the innocence that was lost. Rebecca often found herself reflecting on the phantom limb of a sister she had once known. A bond irrevocably severed by the venomous tendrils of jealousy and hatred that had ultimately devoured Jessica whole. Now, a different kind of life blossomed before her very eyes. The twins, her bright, innocent beacons of hope, were starting preschool, seemingly ordinary rite of passage that, for Rebecca, felt nothing short of monumental after the tumultuous storm they had weathered. As she watched them, tiny figures dwarfed by their bouncing backpacks, eagerly scamper into their new classroom, a warmth, potent and unexpected, bloomed in her chest. Was this what pure, unadulterated joy felt like? Indeed, it was. They were flourishing, these precious children, growing up untainted by the insidious poison that had, for so long, corrupted and darkened her own formative years. This profound sense of liberation, this promise of a childhood free from shadow, was, in itself, the most precious victory, making every past struggle, every painful memory, utterly worth it. As the specter of Jessica's impending release date loomed, casting an undeniable pall over their newfound peace, a proactive measure was swiftly enacted. The family attorney, a seasoned professional who understood the gravity of the situation, meticulously filed for permanent restraining orders. The judge, having painstakingly reviewed the extensive, frankly alarming history of Jessica's volatile behavior and past transgressions, granted these orders with remarkable swiftness, an almost palpable sense of conviction. This wasn't a mere formality, it was a critical shield. Jessica would now be legally, unequivocally barred from any form of contact, direct or indirect, with Rebecca, Malik, their innocent children, or our parents. The stakes were crystal clear. Any violation, even the slightest transgression against these ironclad legal boundaries, would not just incur a penalty, but would guarantee her immediate, unceremonious return to the cold confines of prison. The message was unmistakable. There would be no second chances this time. Yet, even with these legal bulwarks in place, Jessica, ever the manipulator, made one final, desperate overture. A mere month before her scheduled release, a letter arrived for our parents, relayed through her lawyer, a calculated move, no doubt. In it, she painted a picture of radical transformation, claiming a newfound devotion to religion, asserting she had changed, and expressing an earnest, almost saccharine desire to make amends. She pathetically begged for a single chance to see her children, promising, with what felt like practiced sincerity, that she would meticulously respect all boundaries. But could a lever truly change its spots, especially one so deeply ingrained with malice? Our parents, wisely heeding the sagacious advice of the children's therapist and expert who understood the delicate psychological landscape, firmly declined. The therapist's counsel was unambiguous. Trust, once so utterly and irrevocably shattered into a million irreparable pieces, simply could not be magically reassembled or rebuilt with mere platitudes or hollow words, no matter how earnestly they were delivered. Inevitably, as the children matured, their understanding of the world deepened, and with it came the harder, more poignant questions that had long been unspoken. Why can't we see our mother? Why did she do bad things? They would ask, their innocent eyes searching for answers that were impossibly complex. Our parents, tasked with this delicate balancing act, responded honestly yet with profound gentleness. carefully framing their explanations around the fundamental importance of choices and their immutable consequences. The oldest, now an insightful 8-year-old, absorbed these difficult truths with a surprising solemnity, nodding slowly as if processing a profound lesson, eventually declaring with quiet conviction that he understood. The younger two, still navigating the simpler realities of childhood, readily accepted the more straightforward explanation. Mommy, they were told, needed to learn how to be kind before she could visit. It was an age-appropriate truth, shielding them from the darker nuances while still conveying the core message. Meanwhile, Rebecca's twins, these vibrant embodiments of new beginnings, truly flourished, their laughter and energy a stark contrast to the shadows of the past. They remained blissfully unaware of the profound drama and toxicity that had so brutally preceded their very birth, growing up in a haven of peace. At every lively family gathering, they would joyfully chase and tumble with their cousins, their innocent play weaving threads of connection that formed bonds deep, unwavering bonds that effortlessly transcended their complicated and painful origins. Watching them together, a heartwarming tableau of genuine familial affection, a profound sense of optimism swelled. In these precious moments, it felt not just possible, but entirely plausible to imagine a future where the oppressive weight of the past no longer held sway, where it didn't define every breath, every relationship, every single thing. As the week preceding Jessica's release unfurled, heavy with a pervasive, unspoken tension, Rebecca and Malik wisely sought refuge. They embarked on a much-needed vacation, craving not just physical distance from the looming threat, but a vital emotional buffer against the unknown storm that was undeniably brewing. I, meanwhile, remained with our parents, lending my support as we collectively braced ourselves for whatever unpredictable actions Jessica might take upon regaining her freedom. Our days were marked by a flurry of practical preparations, each one a stark reminder of the danger. We meticulously installed new, reinforced locks on every door and window, diligently updated emergency contact lists, and, with heavy hearts, practiced safety protocols with the children, explaining the importance of safe places and trusted adults in a way that wouldn't unnecessarily alarm them, yet still conveyed the gravity of the situation. It was a somber, necessary ritual, a quiet acknowledgement of the battle we were still fighting. Jessica's release arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning, but any illusion of a fresh start was shattered with shocking swiftness. By noon, scarcely hours into her freedom, she had already brazenly violated the terms of her parole, attempting to unlawfully access her children's school records online, a chilling demonstration of her immediate intent. Her parole officer issued a stern, unambiguous warning, yet, by evening, her erratic behavior continued. She was caught driving repeatedly past our parents' old house, seemingly oblivious to the fact they had long since relocated. Strike two. Her short-lived freedom was a ticking clock. She lasted a mere 3 days. On Friday, the inevitable explosion occurred. She descended upon Rebecca's still empty house. Thankfully, they were still on vacation, a whirlwind of rage. Neighbors, alarmed by her ear-piercing screams and the sight of her frantically pounding on windows, demanding her life back, immediately summoned the police. When officers arrived, attempting to de-escalate the volatile situation, Jessica, completely unhinged, lashed out, clawing and biting like a cornered, feral animal. She was swiftly arrested, facing a litany of severe charges: assault on an officer, multiple parole violations, and, most critically, a direct transgression of the permanent restraining order. This time, the judge, having witnessed her predictable trajectory of non-compliance and aggression, showed absolutely no leniency. Jessica was handed down a sentence of 5 additional years in prison, the maximum allowed for her flagrant and numerous violations. It was a definitive, if disheartening, end to her brief stint of freedom. As they led her away, a cacophony of enraged, ear-splitting screams ripped through the hushed courtroom. "I'll never stop," she shrieked, her voice raw with unbridled fury. "Rebecca will pay. The children belong to me." Her words were a chilling testament to her unyielding obsession, a desperate, delusional claim of ownership over lives she had so cruelly attempted to shatter. The courtroom clerk, a veteran who had witnessed countless dramas unfold over 2 decades, later confided in me, her voice still tinged with a tremor, that it was, without a doubt, the worst meltdown she'd ever seen. Rebecca and Malik returned from their much-needed vacation to a scene that, while their home remained thankfully undamaged, was nevertheless profoundly unsettling. Their house was encircled by the stark, yellow barrier of police tape. A palpable sense of violation hung in the air. The security footage, when reviewed, painted a disturbing picture. It showed Jessica, a relentless, almost monstrous figure, systematically trying every single window and door, her movements growing increasingly frenzied and desperate as she realized he couldn't breach the fortified sanctuary. Watching it was deeply unsettling, a visceral punch to the gut. To see this person, who literally shared Rebecca's very DNA, who was once her sister, reduced to such a raw, desperate madness driven by an all-consuming rage, was a tragic, horrifying spectacle. How could a shared lineage produce such wildly divergent paths? Our parents, caught in an inescapable maelstrom of conflicting emotions, felt a profound sense of relief, of primal gratitude that the immediate danger had passed, inextricably mixed with an even deeper, more profound sadness. The daughter they had known, the child they had raised, was irrevocably gone, her essence replaced by a stranger, a twisted reflection they simply could not recognize. They continued their journey through therapy, a necessary process of grieving for the sweet, innocent child Jessica had once been, while simultaneously striving for the agonizing acceptance of the destructive, unrecognizable person she had ultimately become. Their therapist, a beacon of wisdom, consistently reiterated the foundational truth that now, above all else, protecting their innocent grandchildren from this pervasive darkness was their paramount, non-negotiable priority. And indeed, those grandchildren, the very heart of the family's resilience, continued to vigorously thrive, their lives blooming in every conceivable way. They eagerly joined local sports teams, discovering the camaraderie of teamwork and the thrill of competition. They consistently excelled in school, their minds alight with curiosity and potential. They effortlessly made friends, weaving a vibrant tapestry of normal childhood experiences, moments that, considering their harrowing, complicated origins, felt nothing short of astonishing miracles. Rebecca and Malik, stepping seamlessly into their roles, became the beloved fun aunt and uncle, pillars of unwavering support. They attended every single game, every school play, every recital, their cheering presence a constant, comforting refrain. They provided an indispensable cornerstone of stability and boundless love, always, however, with a conscious awareness of not overstepping the delicate boundaries. Understanding their crucial role was to supplement, not supplant, the primary parental figures. With Jessica's prolonged absence, life, like a meandering river finally finding its true course, gradually settled into new, comforting rhythms. Birthday parties, once fraught with an underlying anxiety of potential disruption, were now celebrated with unbridled joy and genuine relaxation. Holidays, previously tinged with apprehension, were embraced in pure, undisturbed peace, imbued with the true spirit of togetherness. Family dinners, once silent battlegrounds of unspoken tension, now resonated with the joyous, uninhibited sound of laughter, a melody long silenced. The emotional scars, of course, remained faint, indelible etchings on the family's collective soul, but they no longer dictated or defined their daily existence. They were simply reminders of how far they had come, rather than prisons of the past. Jessica's children, those brave young souls, each began to grapple with and understand their complex story in their own, age-appropriate ways. The oldest, with a nascent wisdom beyond his years, channeled his processing into a poignant school essay, choosing to write about the profound power of selecting kindness over anger, a clear, insightful reflection of his personal experiences and the lessons he had absorbed. The middle child's artistic expression mirrored her internal landscape. Her drawings, once characterized by dark, troubled scribbles, gradually transformed, blossoming into vibrant, hopeful landscapes, awash with color and light. And the youngest, blessedly spared any conscious memory of the past chaos, simply grew up in a cocoon of unwavering love and security. Her world untainted by the shadows that had once threatened to engulf it. Rebecca, having finally found true liberation, rarely, if ever, mentioned Jessica anymore. When her name did surface, it was spoken not with the searing heat of anger, but with a quiet, almost wistful sadness, a lament for what might have been. She chose hatred, Rebecca would simply state, her voice carrying the weight of ultimate clarity. I chose happiness, and oh, how profoundly she had. Despite every malicious attempt Jessica had made to steal her joy, to destroy her spirit, to dismantle her very existence, Rebecca, with a quiet strength that defied all odds, had not only survived but had painstakingly, beautifully, meticulously built a life brimming with genuine love, purpose, and unshakable peace. The wheel of life continued its gentle turn, bringing another poignant milestone. Rebecca's twins, now older and radiating confidence, started kindergarten, boarding the school bus with their beloved cousins, a truly heartwarming sight. Watching their tiny figures, almost dwarfed by their impossibly large backpacks, clamber onto the bus together, our parents, for the first time in what felt like forever, shed tears that were purely, unadulteratedly happy. It was a tangible testament. The family had not only survived a raging tempest, but had emerged transformed, yet remarkably intact, their bonds forged stronger in the crucible of adversity. Jessica, of course, would serve her extended time, and one day, inevitably, she would be released again. It was a disheartening, almost predetermined prognosis. She would likely violate parole once more, find herself back in prison, repeating this tragic, self-destructive cycle until the inexorable march of age or utter exhaustion finally brought her venomous rampage to a halt. Yet, crucially, her power, the insidious grip she once held over our lives, the ability to instill fear and dictate emotions, was utterly gone. It had evaporated, rendered impotent by the family's collective will to heal and thrive. They had painstakingly learned to live without the constant, oppressive shadow of fear, to carve out spaces for profound joy and laughter, defiant in the very face of her destructive existence. In a strange, almost poetic twist of fate, Jessica, in her final, desperate, enraged pronouncements, had been ironically correct about one solitary thing. Rebecca had, indeed, won. But her victory wasn't born from manipulation, cruelty, or vengeance. No, Rebecca's triumph was forged in the quiet, courageous act of choosing love over hate, of meticulously building a life brimming with goodness instead of succumbing to the urge to destroy, of fiercely and relentlessly protecting what mattered most: her children, her family, her peace. The vibrant, unrestrained laughter of the twins, echoing like sweet music through the walls of their secure home, was the undeniable, living proof that life, vibrant, real life, had unequivocally triumphed over the bitter, insidious poison Jessica had sought to inject into their world. Our family's story, while deeply personal, was by no means unique. Toxic individuals, like insidious weeds, unfortunately exist within the intricate gardens of many families, sowing seeds of pain and chaos until those around them finally learn the vital, often painful, art of self-preservation. But this journey, our journey, was a resounding declaration that survival was not just a hope, but a tangible reality. Happiness was not an elusive dream, but an achievable state. And even after enduring an imaginable hardship, love, true, resilient love, unequivocally endured, like an ancient, mighty oak refusing to be felled by any storm. As I penned the final words of this exhaustive account, a profound realization washed over me. In her relentless, twisted quest to destroy Rebecca, Jessica had, inadvertently, bequeathed upon us an unexpected, yet invaluable gift. Her very malevolence had, in fact, served to reveal the bedrock strength of our family, forcing us to confront the absolute worst and, in doing so, to emerge not entirely unscathed, for scars linger, but defiantly, gloriously unbroken. That, in itself, was the most profound victory of all. From the other room, the children's voices, bright and clear, called out for dinner. Normal voices on a normal evening in a normal, loving home. It was, quite simply, the most beautiful sound in the world.